Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Sharifa. My music name is New Lily. This video, guys, is going to be the video I told y'all that I would be making. So I did finally decide what I wanted to do as far as telling my story, the full story goes. And I decided to go with the 7-part video series that I created. Remember I told you all in my former videos or prior videos, the ones that I just recently created after the update video, that I would be basically uploading a 7-part series where I basically told my story again on camera. I just changed up. I didn't really change up the details. I just changed up the way that I told the story. So in other words, I tried not to mention, I didn't mention names in my prior videos, but what I did do was mention relationships. So I would specify, the relation between which person I was talking about. And so you'll notice in my 7-part series that I'm going to be uploading, I tried my best not to mention. So in other words, I'm just giving you an example. If it was a situation that happened during my story with a family member, I would just say a person in my close circle, or a friend, I would still just say a person in my close circle. Not when I talked about the situation with my roommate though. That was something that I had to specify because I do believe something spiritual is going on. But anyways, so I did decide that I'm gonna upload that video. The only thing is you're gonna notice that there's a watermark on it. And what that watermark is basically I found a video editor that can add the 7 parts together. So it's gonna be just one long 11-hour, almost 12-hour video. And the video editor that I found is basically the same one that I use on my phone. But for some reason, when I'm using it on my computer, in order for me to put the videos together and get that one video, it's putting a watermark over the video. So you'll notice that it says Wondershare Filmora. There's like a strip that's over the video. So that's happening in addition to the fact that the camera quality is terrible. Remember I told y'all the whole reason my videos got deleted was because the computer that I typically use got confiscated. That was not my computer. For those of you that are familiar with my videos, my prior videos that got deleted, in several of my videos, especially the ones where I was doing freestyles, you'll have noticed me recording on one computer, like I would be speaking to the computer on one computer, and then you would see me turning to the right to put the music on my other computer. And so that computer that I was recording on got confiscated. It wasn't my computer. And the reason, like I said in my update video, that video, that computer, I'm sorry for the stammering, guys, I heard noise campaign. But the reason that computer got confiscated was because in my most recent videos, I'm talking about the most recent videos that got deleted, in addition to the other videos I had uploaded. I had mentioned some people specifically. Again, not names, but I did say the relationship, and I mentioned some extremely sensitive content matter. But it had everything to do with what I'm dealing with now with the thought manipulation. And I really wanted documentation of that. This is what's crazy. I remember a Target commenting on my video that it's sad that what's happening to you happens, and then when you talk about it, you get in trouble. But that's literally how this program works. But anyways, so just to avoid problems, I'm recreating all of the content like I told you all, but I'm making sure to be more filtered. So like not even, again, I don't call names, but now it's to the point where I'm not even going to call or specify relationships. I just say this person in my close circle is how I'm phrasing it when I'm talking about certain things, So anyways, that 7-part series, I decided to go with that instead. I merged it, like I said, into one video. There is a watermark on it. The camera quality is terrible. So those of you that are familiar with my prior videos, you'll see what I'm talking about. But it still is my story, and it's the full story, every detail, the backdrop story and all. So basically everything that I've been dealing with from my early 20s up until 2020 when I became a target, and then up until now, age 31. So that's why it's so long. Like I even included details that I didn't include in my prior videos that got deleted. So you can take your time and watch that. It's like I said, almost like 11 to 12 hours long. So it's obviously something that you would have to take your time and watch bit by bit, part by part, if you have the time. But I just wanted to have that documentation of the spiritual battle that I've been through since my early 20s up until now, and what led to my targeting, basically, because I've dealt with target like situations before my targeting, my actual targeting. And I feel like it's all spiritual, to be honest. I don't think it's synchronicity. I think it's very much so connected and not just random coincidences. Anyways, so this video, because I kind of started to ramble a little bit there. This video is going to be the summary video that I mentioned I would be creating. One of the videos that got deleted for me was a summary video, because I was aware of the fact that my parts 1 and 2, how I became a targeted individual videos, the ones that also got deleted, those together equated to 5 hours of content. Now I have even more content. And like I said, it's 11 hours of content. But I realized that was a lot of information for someone to take in, and not everyone would have the time to watch the full story. So I had created a summary video where I basically summarized how I became a target, and I left out the backdrop story. So basically, like the spiritual battle that I had been in my early 20s, I slightly referenced those situations, but I didn't go into details about it. In the summary, like I said, I mainly just focused on, 2019 to now, basically 2023, and how I became a target. And so that's what I'm doing in this video. This video is literally just a summary that leaves out or negates the backdrop story and the extra details. And so that's what this is. And actually, I think I'll probably upload this before I upload my actual full story of how I became targeted. So you can just have the summary of what happened to me, basically. And then when and or if you have the time, you can check out my full story with the backdrop, because I do reference that situation, several situations that was included in the backdrop story in some of my recent videos. And also, too, some of the stuff that happened in the backdrop story is even used now in my targeting, I've even noticed some targets that are turned against me doing certain things, So it's just like, I do want to give an explanation for everything. And this is why I made sure to very clearly talk about everything in my part 7 series where I told my full story. Anyways, let me go ahead and get started with the summary, because I do not want it to be any longer than an hour and a half. And I managed to somehow do it before. I was able to somehow condense the story into an hour and a half when I created that summary that got deleted. So I'm going to try to do that right now. That intro was already pretty extensive. Anyways, so basically, guys, with the summary, like I said, I'm leaving out the backdrops. I'm going to try and very quickly kind of rush through the backdrop without really having it there. Basically, I've had, like I said, a spiritual battle since my early 20s. I'm age 31 now. So I went to school in Tallahassee, attended school with this roommate and my older, sister. And the reason I'm saying relationships right now is because I'm not talking about the targeting. I'm just telling you slightly talking about the backdrop, not majorly. So I can mention relationships in that regard. Anyway, so I attended community college in my early 20s in Tallahassee. I went up there with my sister, my older sister. I followed her up there. She's older than me. And so when I graduated from high school, went up there, lived with her for a while. Then I had a roommate come up to live with us, which was a friend that I had made in middle school that I had kind of had like a rocky friendship with a little bit. I had even been told some things about her feelings towards me, actually. But still did just kind of brush that to the side when she asked me to come up by me. She was having issues at some of the other places she had been at. And so she said she wanted to come up and stay with me, my sister and I. Again, this is in my early 20s. So this was after I had already graduated from high school, straight out of high school, left for community college, age 18, stayed up there for a couple years, and then around age 20 was when this roommate, or soon to be roommate at the time, contacted me and told me that basically, she was in different places where things were not working out, and she wanted to know if she could come by me. Told her sure. She came up by me. That situation didn't work out. Quite a few things happened. This is where you'll have to check out my full story. Ended up moving out from her with my older sister. Stayed in Tallahassee for a few years. Things just kind of went south, progressively. And not progressively I'm stammering. Not progressively as if things were so horrible, but things did start to not work out for me up there. I had even lost my financial aid. Again, I talked about this in my full story. It wasn't because of my GPA. It was because of this course that I had failed multiple times due to my ADD. And I only had like 2 more classes. But because of this one course that I had failed multiple times, I lost my financial aid due to my completion rate dropping. So that was just, all of that was happening. I wasn't in school, struggling financially, different things happening, decided to move back to this island, the island that I'm from. So I moved back home. This was around 2014. And when I moved back home, basically dealt with a lot of different situations. I even encountered a cyber stalking, cyberbullying situation that lasted for years. Talked about that in my full story as well. Not going to talk about it in this video. Like I said, I'm just going to touch on some of the things that happened in my early 20s so I can speed up and fast forward to the main part of the story. But basically, a lot of things was going wrong for me at that time. I had also encountered a bad situation with an ex before coming home from Tallahassee. And so I was just going through a lot at that time, 2014, and it culminated in me becoming a drunk. Basically, I became a blackout drunk from the years 2014, you can say late 2014 to 2016, I was a blackout drunk. And in 2015, I ended up getting raped due to that situation. And so ended up cleaning myself up. Worked, basically, was able to pay off that class that I had failed multiple times. Saw that my community college offered the course online. And so I was able to take it as well as the other course that I needed to get my AA. Once I got my AA, I was able to apply to become a paraeducator / substitute teacher with the Department of Education from the island that I'm from. And so I worked that job. I did that job for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And I encountered a situation at that job that I believe was tied to the cyber stalking, cyberbullying situation that I had dealt with that kind of started when I moved back home. It actually started in Tallahassee. Again, you have to check out my full story. I'm not going to go into the details of it in this video. But then when I came back to Island was when it started full throttle. And so I believe some of the things that I encountered at this job was tied to that situation. But anyways, things got kind of bad at that job and I reverted back to my old ways of drinking. And really what it is I'm extremely socially awkward. I know I'm using bad grammar here. I'm sorry, but I do have social anxiety. And it's actually been a detriment to me throughout the years. So due to that, and then the fact that I have Asperger's, and again, I don't want to sound like one of those like Looney Tune people that have all these fictitious mental illnesses, but literally this is something that I've been dealing with for years. And I do remember in my early 20s before leaving Tallahassee that I'd spoken with my mom about the fact that I thought I had Asperger's, but I never really looked into it any further. I do have ADD as well. That's been professionally diagnosed. I was diagnosed in middle school. The Asperger's never professionally diagnosed. It was just something that I always suspected that I had because I'm just so socially awkward. And don't take that the wrong way. Despite being socially awkward, I've always had a lot of friends, at least earlier on in life. Things got worse as the years went on. But in my early years, like high school, in my 20s, I had a lot of friends. I was able to get by despite being socially awkward, never feeling ostracized or anything like that. Actually, my first experience of feeling ostracized was actually when that cyber stalking, cyberbullying situation started on this island that I'm from. And even then, it was nothing like what's happening now. It was like a situation that seemed kind of like targeting. It did resemble what happens to a targeted individual in the program, but nowhere near as severe. It wasn't what I'm dealing with now. So anyways, I have always been socially awkward. So basically kind of suspected that I had Asperger's, and then very recently, actually just at the top of this year, the beginning of this year, I started doing some self-discovery because of my targeting getting worse, just doing some self-discovery and looking into my personality. And that's where I found out that I have the INTJ personality type. And then I also found out that I have Asperger's. I took the actual test that they use to diagnose that mental disorder, and I found out that I do have Asperger's. So now it kind of makes sense to me why, certain things have happened. Not totally. I do, again, think something spiritual is going on, but I think that in addition to what I got going on with my personality, created like some weird situation for me in life. Anyway, so trying to speed up here because again, I'm trying to condense the story. This is the summary. So anyways, when I got back, I'm talking about when I'm back home now. This is 2016 when I started teaching as a paraeducator. So I cleaned myself up, like I said, no longer a blackout drunk. But then this bullying situation starts to happen at work. And I start to revert to my old ways and drink again. At this point, not blackout drunk level, but still an alcoholic. You know, there are different types of alcoholics, but nonetheless, it's still alcoholism. At this time, I was a functioning alcoholic. And so that kind of lasted for basically, you can say, the duration of my time down here until I decided to go back to school. So I was a functioning alcoholic to the point where you wouldn't have even known that I had drank unless maybe you smelled it on me. I didn't stammer. I wasn't stumbling. I wasn't acting drunk. It wasn't like before where I was blacking out, but still to the point where, I'm an alcoholic. And so I decided I did not want that for myself. I cleaned myself up again, and this time said, this is not the life I want to live. And I decided to leave for school. Like I said, I had my AA at this time. I had saved up, and I decided I would go back to school, get my BA. The goal was always to either become a lawyer or a teacher. And the teaching thing kind of came from my mom. I grew up in a household with a mom that was a chemistry teacher, and then later she became a dean. So, like, always been in academia and things of that nature. So I knew that that was something that came as second nature to me because I grew up around it. I knew that was something that I could do. And also, I enjoy reading and writing. But then the other thing I was thinking about was law because I'm a competitive person. Always been into sports, athletics, things of that nature. And so the thing about law that I liked was the competitive aspect of it. I like the fact that you can, go in a courtroom and like fight, debate basically, and try and, win a case. I like the idea of that. And then also too, I like the aspect of helping somebody win a case. All of that was fun for me, the thought or concept of that. So those are the things that I was interested in. And then also too, what law, it consists of a lot of reading and writing and stuff. And I like that stuff. So anyways, decided to go back to school in 2018. At this time, I was 27. I had just made 27 because my birthday is in December. And I went at the beginning of 2018 back to school in South Florida. So like I said, I was age 27, had just made 27, an older college student staying in the dorms basically. Because for this college experience, in my early 20s, in my younger years, 18, 19, 20, those ages, when I was in community college, I didn't stay in the dorms. And I kind of regret doing things backwards because I think that also played a part in some of the things that went wrong for me. But back then, as I told you, I was in an apartment with my sister and my roommate. And so now I'm back in school again at age 27, and I'm deciding to stay on campus in the dorms, which didn't work out for me. And it wasn't something negative. It wasn't like I was having a terrible experience. It was more so just feeling like an older college student and wanting my space, not liking the loud noises that happened at night in the dorms, excuse me. And I understood why it was happening. This is college. I understand there's young people that are getting out the house that want to party and live and, enjoy themselves. So I was never angry at those girls for that. But I knew that I didn't want to be around it. I didn't want the loud noises. I had too much going on. I was working 3 jobs. I had a full load of classes. Just a lot was going on. And then also to the bathroom, I didn't like the bathroom situation. I have a bathroom OCD. I guess this is a part of the Asperger's. I saw that people with Asperger's have a lot of OCDs, which also made sense. I was like, okay, it's all clicking now. But like, I can't swallow my spit if the bathroom door is open. And I've been that way since childhood. I don't know what it is, but I've always just felt like I could smell the toilet. It's the weirdest thing ever. Even if it's a clean bathroom, like spotless, I can still smell, like if I'm sitting in my room and someone opens a bathroom, even if it's a clean, nice smelling bathroom, I can smell it. And I'm always right. I always know when it's open. My siblings used to laugh at me about that. Like, how the hell do you know that the bathroom's open? Like, and I just can know. I just smell it. And the weird thing is too, I'll say this in the summary. I'm trying to leave out all the little details, but I will talk about this very briefly. I do apologize if I sound nasally or talk up in my nose. Sometimes I might even sound like congested. I might even tell you I'm coming back and I might pause the video and go to blow my nose. That's because I have some sort of, from what I was told at least as in childhood, a deformity. My nose has always been stuffy since childhood, and allergies actually runs in my family. So I remember my mom taking me to a nose and ear doctor because basically they thought it was some form of allergies or sinuses. And when I was taken to the doctor, he took the little tube and stuck it up in my nostril, and he could barely get it into my nostril, and so he did further inspection and said that basically I had some sort of deformity where my nostrils are smaller than the typical nostrils. And so basically he said that was causing like severe post nasal drip. And so this is why I was constantly congested. And basically he told my mom that not that I would need surgery, because it's not like this thing was what's the word I'm looking for? It's not like it was life threatening, so I can live with it. I have been living with it. But if I wanted to get rid of the stuffy nose, that I would have to get surgery. And so I remember my mom giving me that choice, and I didn't want it because I've always been into natural health. Even when I was diagnosed with ADD, I remember my mom giving me the choice of whether or not I wanted to take the medication. I did not want to take it. And so that was the thing there. I just decided to live with this disorder. And so it's just something I talk about in my videos, just so you all know. That was something that was an insecurity of for me for a long time. It's not anymore. I actually don't give a rat's bum. But I still do like to talk about it. And so as it relates to my OCD with the bathroom, I don't know if this plays a part in things or not. You would think that because my nostrils are so small that I wouldn't be able to smell as good as other people, but it's the opposite. Like I smell everything. So I don't know what that's about, but I can really smell the bathroom. And so for me, the bathrooms in the dorms were just really gnarly. You know, there was poop all over the seats. Sometimes it would almost seem like a girl was exploding in the stalls, and she would always pick the same two stalls to alternate between. I don't know who it was doing it, but it was like she was shitting all over the seat. Excuse my language. There were bloody pads all over the floor and the garbage and in the shower stalls. It was just a lot of gnarly stuff going on. And I'm not trying to sound bougie or anything like that, because if you get to later in the story, you know, that might seem like that's what's going on, and it's not. I'm just, especially as it pertains to bathrooms, really, I don't want to say scornful, but you could almost say scornful, and it's really due to my OCD. Even my own bathroom, if I'm living by myself, I'm scornful about I just cannot stand bathrooms, because to me it relates to poop and pee, and so it's nauseating to me, and I can smell it. Anyway, so that all of that was an issue for me, and so I decided that I didn't want to stay in the dorms anymore. You know, I'd stayed there for basically the first year. Remember, this was me going for my major at this point. You know, I had already gotten my AA, so I had already taken my general courses. So for me going back to school at 27, I only had 2 years left. So I had done the 1 year in the dorms. I didn't mind it. And I hope you guys heard the noise campaign when I said I only had 1 year left. That's them alluding, excuse me, to my time running out. I don't know if the video picked up on it or not, but it seems like my room is booby trapped. There's like this thing that like snaps in the room at certain times. And so when I said I only had 1 year left, the thing made the noise there. And I fear not. I walk with the Most High in my heart. So if I have 1 year left, the Most High knows it, and that's good. That's what He intended for me. So I fear not. I'm gonna still talk and tell my story and what happened to me. So they're not scaring me with the stuff. I don't care at this point. You know, so many death threats and stuff, but I realize that that goes along with this program. Michael Barden talks about it too. They'll even send you like apparently stuff in the mail. Thank the Most High that's never happened to me. You know, with me, they hack my apps like they do with all targets. Send me ads and stuff or videos. You know, they can actually literally interact with the things that come to your screen, target you through the TV and stuff. I'm gonna do I actually have a video like that got deleted, and I realized I still have that video in my video editor. So I'm so glad. I'm gonna re-upload that. I literally was showing evidence of how they target me through the TV. And then there was another video I had where I was showing a clip from Truth Hurts Hypocrisy America's page, where he was showing how they targeted him through the TV as well. So I think what I'm gonna do is record that video. I think what I'm gonna do is screen record that video that I still have, and then add in those clips from Truth Hurts Hypocrisy America. Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. Anyway, guys, so that's the case, basically. Sorry about that. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna re-record that video, and then add in the clips from Truth Hurts Hypocrisy America, because what it was I had two different videos about that, how they target you through the TV, the radio, anything plugged into the matrix. In one video I was actually sharing the clips from Truth Hurts Hypocrisy America's page, and then just kind of briefly talking about my experience with that. And then the second video, the one that I still have, I was showing you an example of them targeting me through the TV. And so I think what I'm going to do is do a screen recording of the video where I was showing them targeting me through the TV. And then that screen recording in the beginning, before I share the clip of my video, I think I'll show you the clips from Truth Hurts Hypocrisy America's page. So you'll see that video's coming soon. It will be posted after this one, and after my 7-part series. Hold on 1 second. Last warning. All right, guys, I'm sorry about that. I'm gonna talk softer. I really don't understand because I'm in my room with the door closed, so I'm not really sure how I'm being loud. But anyways, let me go ahead and continue. And I'm talking close to the speaker, so hopefully you all can hear me well. Anyway, so I forgot what I was saying. So yeah, I will be uploading those documentations, basically, those two videos. It will be one video now, but basically just showing how they can target you through the television and stuff. Even later in the story, you're gonna hear how that they started to do that to me when I tried to relocate off island, when I was staying in my car in Florida. And it almost seems like they're trying to make it like when they do this thing through the television and stuff, they kind of try to make it seem like it's some sort of spiritual intervention, like it's the Most High or an angel or something like that, and it's done with this wicked technology. But I'll get back to that in a minute. I don't want to go off on a tangent. So, anyways, I was in the dorms, and I was really just not. And it's not to say that I was even having a hard time. Actually, in retrospect, now looking back on things and what ended up happening and transpiring when I left the dorms, I actually wish I had just stayed on campus. I think the whole trajectory of my life would have been different had I stayed on campus. There's so many different, like little small decisions that I look back on and I'm like, if I had just did this one thing differently, the whole trajectory of my life would have been different. I just keep thinking about that, but that's not healthy. It's like literally like crying over spoiled milk or spilled milk. So I try not to do that. But I'm just thinking back to it because even though those little things were irritating me in the dorms, it wasn't nothing major. I had free cafeteria food. They had good food on campus. Just a nice little neat campus, nothing major. I could have stayed there and just finished things off. I literally had one more year when I decided to leave and go stay in Airbnbs. So I'm annoyed with myself for that. But before leaving the dorms, because I actually do want to add this in there, I want to add every part in, even though I'm leaving out major details, not major details, backdrop details, that what led up to my targeting. When it comes to talking about this time that was right before my targeting, I want to make sure that I include everything. And also too, you'll hear why, because later in my targeting, certain things started to also become a part of my targeting. And you know how it is in this program. Once you're into this program, it's like everything you do is villainized. And then just basically smear campaigns and things of that nature. So I remember in 2019, again, this was when I was still staying on campus. I have been writing music. I've always written music, and really, you can call it music if you want, but what it is poetry. It turned into music once I started recording. But I've been writing poetry for years since high school, like books and books of poetry, just rhyming and, off to the side. When those people that like when a beat drops, they just start to rhyme, to themselves. I'm one of those type of people, always have been. Even sometimes sitting down with siblings when I was younger and just we do this thing called a freestyle contest where we freestyle, and I come with dope lines every now and then. So it's just like it's always been the case with me. I've always liked poetry. So I remember that at this time when I was staying in the dorms, I had, and I can mention family at this point. Like I said, I'm not to the main part of the story yet. So when I get to that part, then I'm not going to mention relationships, whether it's family, friend, boyfriend, whatever. I'm going to try and just say people in my close circle. But at this point in the story, this is before the targeting started. So I can mention relationships. So, anyways, I do remember when I was still staying in the dorms, at this time, my sisters and I, were attending the Hebrew church. We are Hebrew Israelites. And you'll hear also in my story how that even became a problem. And it's not even that understanding, it was really me and the way that I represented that understanding due to what was happening to me. Anyway, so, a lot of the stuff that I shared in my car, I don't believe and I don't support. But it was literally out of anger of what was happening towards me. Anyway, so I'll get there. I don't want to hop ahead of myself. So at this time, my sisters and I, because my younger sister was attending university with me, basically, when I went up there, she basically, when she graduated, decided that she wanted to come to that university as well. And that university is my mother's alma mater. That's where my mom graduated from. And also I have an uncle that went there. So it's basically like, we were like, what's the word? Legacies, if you will. So it's just like that type of vibe going on there. So my younger sister and I were attending college there at the time. And then my older sister was also living in Florida with her husband and my nieces. And so I remember that time we were all going to the Hebrew church together. We would have get-togethers, go out sometimes. We had some friends from the church, vibes like that, cool stuff. Nothing irregular or out of the normal. And so I remember that my brother-in-law knew that I was into music, basically, that I write poetry and stuff. Never had recorded myself, but basically he knew that I liked to rap and that I wrote music. He also knew that my younger sister liked to do a little singing thing. It's just kind of like a musical family. We have art in the family. And so my brother-in-law also is into music, and he's a rapper. I'm a real rapper too, because if you all have checked out my music, my recordings, it is a form of rapping what I do, but it's more so almost like spoken word over music, but I just have a cadence. And so this is what makes it seem like rapping because I have a cadence. But really, what I do is just spoken word poetry to the beat. I mean, I guess in a way you could say that's what rapping is because rapping is a form of poetry. But it's not like someone that's like Lotto or Meg the Stallion or even Lauren Hill, who I'm a big fan of. That's one of my biggest inspirations. But not even, like any of those people that really have a flow for real where they sound like a rapper. For me, it's more so like if you listen to my stuff, it's almost like I created my own genre because again, it is like, almost like rapping. I am saying my stuff over the beat and there is a cadence there, but it's not really like a rapper like that for real. So it's really just poetry that I do over the spoken word, over the beat. Anyway, nonetheless, my brother-in-law knew that I like to write poetry and he's an actual rapper. Like he really sounds like one of those rappers from South Florida. If you listen to his music, he actually sounds pretty good. So I remember that he was talking to her in communication with some guys from up north, some Hebrews from up north that were coming down to South Florida. And so basically they knew that he did music and they did music as well. And so they were saying they wanted to link up with him in the studio basically and create a song. And so I remember when they were coming down, my brother-in-law basically inviting my sisters and I to the studio and saying that if we had anything that we wanted to record, to bring it. And so I even remember my younger sister and I working on a song together, and saying that we were going to record this song. And then I had a few other songs that I wanted to record. Like I said, I write poetry. And I was curious to know how I would sound if I had ever recorded myself. It was never anything that I had considered doing. So to me, this sounded cool. I was like, okay, like a fluke coincidence type thing, nothing that I pursued. More so just like, okay, this opportunity, cool. That was the vibe right then. So anyways, I remember when we got to the studio, my sisters and I kind of chickened out. We were sitting there in the corner. There was like a couple other sisters from the church sitting in there. And we kind of felt like intimidated. We were more like sitting in the corner. And also, too, in the Hebrew Israelite understanding, women are typically trained to be more submissive. So we were sitting there feeling kind of intimidated. And all of these guys were hopping in and out of the booth and stuff. And I just remember feeling intimidated. And they were in there rapping. And, again, I had never recorded myself. So I remember when my brother-in-law came out there and kind of like tried to nudge us into coming into the studio, like, do y'all want to come in, that type of thing. It's just like we chickened out. It didn't happen. This is to tell you, like, it was nothing that I had ever pursued. I was like actually chickening out when I was given this opportunity. So then I remember also in the church, a lot of people in there were musically inclined. There were a lot of rappers in that church, a lot of singers in that church. And so I remember my brother-in-law basically had this friend in that church and his wife was friends with my sisters and I. And so I remember him inviting us over because he too knew that we were into music. He kind of had like this makeshift studio in his apartment. Excuse me. So when he invited us over, again, this time my sisters both tried to nudge me this time, like, come on now, this is less people here. Let's do this. Let's hop on the mic and not let's like my older sister. My older sister doesn't really do music like that. But my younger sister kind of just saying like, come on, Reefy, let's do it. And even my older sister encouraging me, like, and when I say Reefy, that's my nickname. My name is Sharifa. Oh, I didn't give y'all the meaning of my name. I did it in my part 7 series, but again, I know not everyone will have the time to watch that, or at least it might take you a while to watch it. I did it in the very beginning of the video, but still, I want to do it here. So I'm going to pause really quickly and very quickly. This is like the millionth time of me doing this because I've done it in several videos that got deleted. Did it in the 7-part series. Did it in this recording that I was planning to upload in place of the 7-part series. So I've done it several times, but I'm going to do it again here. Tell you the meaning of my name. So my name is Sharifa. My last name is Nurse. And I know that that's a unique last name. The reason I don't mind giving my name out is because at this point with my targeting, my name is out there anyways. Like literally, so much people have my information. So many, excuse me, people have my information that at this point I don't care. So now I'm telling my story. I don't mind. But anyway, so my first name is Sharifa. And basically the meaning of Sharifa is it means distinguished. It has Arabic and African roots. That's the origin, and it means distinguished. So I've always loved the meaning of my name. And my mother basically gave me like this little backdrop story of why she gave me that name. Because although I love the meaning of my name, I always remembered wondering why I was the only sibling out of all 4 of my siblings that didn't have a biblical name. And hear the noise campaign a little bit. They always do that when I say this, as if they're not. Anyways, that's fine. I think that just means I'm special. The Most High has his hand on me because I have a good name, the meaning of my name, and then I give myself a Hebrew name. So I have a Hebrew name now. But recently, when I tell the story, they try to do a little noise campaign for that, and it doesn't bother me. But I still do like to mention it. Anyway, so I grew up in a very close knit household, with four siblings. So there were five of us in total, and then two parents. Um, Close knit household, like I said, very good household, no issues. Never feeling mistreated or anything of that nature. And actually, I do recall seeing that some targets talk about the fact that their whole life they felt targeted, and they felt like this program had always been, a part of their existence, and they had always been ostracized, and sometimes even talking about abuse from parents from childhood. That wasn't the case with me. Like, literally, I had a good life. And then in my early 20s, things just started to go crazy. And I actually felt like, and still do feel like, witchcraft was done on me, or some sort of spiritual influence. I do feel that way. And I talked about that in detail in my full story. So please, if you have the time, check it out. I'm not going to go into the details about that right now, but it stems back to that roommate, and that situation in Tallahassee, with certain things that happened that made me suspect that that might have been the case. But I'm not going to go into the details of it right now. But literally, after moving out from that situation, it could have just been a coincidence, but it was just so many freaking correlations and connections and things, so please check it out. But literally, after moving out from that situation, things just went haywire in my life, and it just kept getting crazier and crazier, to the point where now I'm in this program. Um, anyway, so basically, my four siblings all have biblical names, and I'm the only one that doesn't have a biblical name. And so, although I love my name and I love the meaning, I do remember asking my mom why that was the case. And so she told me, basically, like I said, my mother has been teaching for years. I grew up in that household with a mom that was a teacher, and she was a teacher since her early 20s. And I remember when she was pregnant with me in her late 20s, basically she told me that what happened was that she had a student that had really positive attributes, that was a really good person, and that had good characteristics. And so she named me after that girl, because she wanted me to basically grow up to be similar to that girl and have those attributes. And then the middle name that she gave me was after another student. And that student too had good attributes and characteristics. And then also that student kept asking her, please name her after me, please name her after me. And so that's where I got my middle name from. I'm not going to divulge my middle name. It's not that serious. But basically, two of my names came from two different students that my mom had. So maybe that's why I followed in her footsteps and I ended up teaching. But that's what happened. So anyways, that's where my first name came from. Now I'm going to talk about the new Lily. Oh, the nurse, my last name. That's just my last name. That wasn't a name that was given to me. That was more so by birth. And that name derives from Trinidad. So basically, like I told you, I'm from the islands. I grew up, born and raised in the United States Virgin Islands, but my father and his side of the family is from Trinidad. So I have a lot of family out there in Trinidad. And I even have family from Barbados on that side. And then on my mom's side, my mom was born and raised in New York, well, at least in her teen years, but her family and her origin is from the Virgin Islands. So I have family on that side, from my mom's side, from every island in the Virgin Islands you can think of, from all of the islands in the United States Virgin Islands, and I also have family from the British Virgin Islands, excuse me. So it's like I have a medley of different island nationalities in me. But the nurse specifically derives from Trinidad. And so basically where my music name came from, New Lily, basically is a play off of my last name. And so I'll explain how that happened. Like I said, I have been going through this spiritual battle since my early 20s, and you'll have to check out my full story to hear all the details. I included everything in that thing. I'm not including it now, but I am going to reference it. So basically, in my early 20s, after moving out from this roommate, my sister and I were both under the suspicion that there might have been some sort of spiritual thing at play, based off of some things that had happened, including my sister getting really sick, and us not being able to find anything wrong with her when we went to the doctor. So I remember we thought something spiritual was going on. We had even found this roommate's dirty underwear on my sister's toilet when we left town and came back. So different things were going on. Like I said, I'm not talking about it in this video too much. And so my sister and I started, once we moved up from this roommate, trying to get closer to the Most High, excuse me. We started going to a Hebrew church. We started eating healthy. We changed our diet, got into the holistic eating, health, nature, fitness, all that type of stuff. And we already grew up in that type of environment. Typically if you're from the islands, you have that type of natural vibe going on anywhere, where you tend to eat more so like earth foods and things of that nature. So I kind of grew up in that kind of household anyways. And then when my sister and I decided to now really get into our health, we really started getting into that stuff, like eating almost vegan, you could say, but we were eating meat. We weren't vegan, but we were eating similar to how a vegan would eat, like non-GMO this, non-GMO that, grass-fed meat. So this is where we were not like vegans, but we were eating like grass-fed, non-GMO, type meat, that type of stuff like that. Just eating really healthy and taking care of our health. I even remember at this time I started learning about fluoride, not drinking water that had fluoride in it, making sure to drink spring water. If you can, trying to filter the water you bathe with, especially in the States. Here in the islands, typically we're bathing with rainwater because we use cisterns. But like in the States where you're using the tap and stuff, even that has fluoride in it. So I was learning about trying to use a filter to bathe, because the fluoride calcifies the pineal gland and all these different things, causes cavities and stuff, diseases, whatever. So I remember around this time we were really getting into holistic health. Around this time too, I even stopped brushing my teeth with toothpaste that had fluoride in it. I stopped using deodorant that had aluminum in it. We were really health conscious, like live green type of stuff going on back then. So I remember around this time, started getting into the Hebrew Israelite understanding for ourselves because we grew up in a household where that was our understanding, and really in high school. Because before high school, majority of my life, actually, I grew up in a household that was not divided. It wasn't divided, but it was more so just like kind of Christian Rastafari influence. Like I remember my dad was Rastafari and my mom was kind of Christian Rastafari type vibe. That was the vibe that we had going on in this household. Not even Christian. I wouldn't even say that my mom was a Christian, basically with the belief system that she had, but she didn't really call herself a Christian. But it was more so like Rastafari, just that type of way where you're into the Bible and, just free, one love type vibe. That's what was going on in this household most of my life. And then in high school, I remember my dad coming home with the understanding that we were Hebrew. And this is where we started learning about the Hebrew understanding and basically some of those concepts in high school. But we didn't take that seriously. I mean, not to say we weren't taking spirituality seriously. Of course, we believed in the Bible very much so, and very much so God-fearing people. That's how I've always been. But it was less into it, like as in understanding certain ideals and things of that nature as it pertains to that understanding. But I remember, like I said, around this time after moving out from the roommate, my sister and I were trying to get closer to the Most High and started going to church. And this is where we went to a Hebrew church because this was our understanding at the time. This is where we started learning the information for ourselves. And so this is where we started getting into that understanding. And so around that time, this was in my early to mid 20s, like 24, 25, around that age. I remember that I wanted a biblical name. I had already planned to do that. I already said when I got older, I would probably give myself a biblical name and then just kind of hyphenate it. I wasn't planning to get rid of the Sharifa. I love my name, but I wanted a biblical name. So then I remember around this time when we were getting into the Hebrew Israelite understanding and going to the Hebrew church, we were seeing that a lot of the people in the understanding had given themselves Hebrew names. So basically they had converted and changed their names to Hebrew names. And so I thought to myself, well, this is how I can end up with a biblical name. This is what I'm going to do. And so I remember looking through different Hebrew names and I found the name Yau-Kabed. And so with this name, I really enjoyed the meaning. And then I also liked the fact that it was unique, even though it sounds kind of, I don't know, to me, it just sounds a little bit, not as in bad. It just didn't fit me. I don't think it fit me. It wasn't a bad name. I just don't think it fit me. And so I remember at this time too, I was off and on Facebook due to the cyberstalking, cyberbullying situation that I was dealing with in my 20s. I talk about this in detail in my full story, so please check it out. I'm not going to go into the details about that right now. But I remember during this time, I was off and on Facebook because of that. And so I remember at this time, I had just created Facebook again, and they had started doing this weird thing where I couldn't put my last name in because it's the name of a profession. So I remember really that being annoying for me. And later I found a loophole to that, by the way. So anyone with that last name, if you're having an issue putting that last name in, if you have an Android or an iPhone, well, I know what iPhone. I don't know about Android. I haven't tried it with Android. But if you press down on the E, basically they'll give you different types of E's with different symbols on top. Like you have the two dots, the E with the two dots on top, the E with the hyphen on top. You have different types of E's. And so if you put one of those E's in that has the symbol, then you can put nurse in as your last name. It's so stupid, but that's the loophole I found. But before I found that loophole, I literally just could not put my last name in anymore. And I had just created my Facebook again. So I put Lily, and what I did was, not Lily, excuse me, I put Yau-Kabed. And then what I did was I put new in as my last name as an abbreviation of nurse. And so after a while of having this name, again, this was before I had ever recorded any music or anything like that. I was writing music and poetry, never recorded myself. So this was not a music name. This was literally my name. This was my basically alias, I guess you could say. This was my alias, my Hebrew alias. So, anyways, after having Yaukabed Nu for a while, I realized that and again, too, this happened before I even went back up to Florida to get back into school. So this was when I was actually still on island when this happened. Anyways, so because I had just moved back from Tallahassee, my sister and I had gotten into the Hebrew Israelite understanding for ourselves. We had started going to church, all of these things, and then I moved back home. Around age, how old was I? 23, I think, when I moved back home, or 24. I was 24 when I moved back home the first time. And this was around 2014, shortly before that battle that I talked about happened. Anyway, so I remember this was my alias at the time. This was my Hebrew alias. So I had Yaukabed Nu on my Facebook for a while. And I realized that I just wasn't feeling Yaukabed. Although I like it, it's a nice name. It's a unique, beautiful name. It just didn't fit me. And so I was like, let me give myself another Hebrew name. I'm like I got to be able to find something better. Because although I've never been a girly girl, I'm not like into dainty, like flowery type stuff. I still wanted a more elegant name. And I think that's what the problem was. Yaukabed is a nice name, but it didn't feel elegant enough is what I think the problem was for me. So I went through and I started looking again, doing my research, looking for a different Hebrew name. And I came across Lily. And I know Lily sounds so basic, right? But to me, it was beautiful because it represented a flower, it's a flower. And I thought of myself as a flower, basically. And then also, too, one of the Most High's favorite flowers is lilies. So I thought to myself, okay, I'm a lily, like one of the Most High's lilies. This is nice. Yeah, I could do this. Lily. And so this is why I put Lily Nu in as my name, basically. I had changed it from Yaukabed to Lily. And at this time, too, I was somewhat new anyways because I had just got into the Hebrew understanding for myself. So I was like, Lily Nu, this is good. And so I put the name in on Facebook. And as I'm looking at it, the way my mind works abstractly, it didn't happen with the Yaukabed. When I had the Yaukabed Nu in, it just stayed as Yaukabed Nu. But when I put the Lily Nu in, I realized, wait a minute, why don't I put it in as New Lily instead of Lily Nu? Like a new lily, a new flower. And so this is what I did. I literally just switched it around and I put the Nu, which was the abbreviation of my last name, in as the first name. And then I put the Lily in as the last name. And that's literally, excuse me, where I got the moniker New Lily from. It wasn't a music name. It was literally just my alias, my Hebrew alias. And so I had the New Lily before I even started recording music, because that was also something they did noise campaign for in one of my prior videos when I was talking about the story, when they know full well this is what happened. It's just madness with this program. It's like so much warped, things that happen when you become a part of this program. So anyways, then when I ended up leaving for school and getting back into college, basically, I remember that at this time I still had the New Lily on my Facebook. And then in parentheses, I had my real name, Sharifa Nurse. Or sometimes I would have Sherry Nurse or Reefy Nurse. Reefy is my nickname from childhood, and Reefy is short for Sharifa, a nickname for Sharifa. So anyways, I remember now I'm back in school, fast forwarding back into the story where I'm talking about where I started recording. We went to this basically friend from the church's apartment that had like the makeshift studio in his apartment. And at this time, I was no longer drinking, not even a functioning alcoholic. However, I wasn't sober the way that I am now. So basically, I would still drink socially at this time when I was in school in Florida, when I went back to school for the second time. So if you look at my history of alcoholism, I had a 3 years of alcoholism, basically, when it was at its worst. 2014 to 2016, I was a blackout drunk, got raped in 2015. And then 2017, when I was working that substitute teacher job and I was kind of getting low-key bullied. It wasn't anything overt. It was just slight things that they were doing, but still made me extremely uncomfortable, especially since I'm awkward. I became a functioning alcoholic. So basically 3 years of alcoholism, 1 year functioning, and then the 2 prior years blackout drunk. So now I'm in school in Florida and I'm completely sober, but still drinking socially when we go to social events. Now it's like to the point where I wouldn't even put a beer to my lips. I've been sober completely for a year now. And I'm going to get back to how I started drinking again as well, when this targeting started. This is why I'm like kind of like a testimony for other targets, because I see other targets talking about that, the fact that the things they do can make you want to turn to drugs. And that's like the worst thing you can do. Anyway, so I'm in school and completely sober, but still drinking socially. And I remember at this apartment, the girl used to like to drink heavily, this girl. And not that she was an alcoholic or anything. She was just, she used to be a party girl back in the days. And so she still kind of had that vibe going on, even though she was now converted into the Hebrew church or whatever. So she still used to have a lot of liquor in her apartment. And so I remember shots were going around, there were people around there and stuff. And I felt really nervous about going on the mic. And my sisters were literally trying to egg me on. And so I remember I did have to take like 2 to 3 shots before I felt like the courage enough to go on and finally record for the first time. And so my sister and I recorded that song we had written together. It was a song about the Most High. And then I recorded 2 other songs that I had written, 3 other songs, excuse me. One was called Black Rage. One was called Love Thyself. And the other one was called ADHD. And Black Rage, I feel the need to explain. You don't see it on my YouTube anymore. Actually, if you scroll to the bottom of my YouTube, the first 2 videos you'll see are the 2 professionally recorded videos that got recorded in that apartment. And that was Love Thyself and ADHD. The Black Rage I took down because of my targeting, because of some of the controversial, offensive content that I shared when my targeting blew up. And I literally just shared that out of anger and out of basically, you could say, mental insanity. It was like temporary insanity, what I was going through. I'll get to that part of the story in a minute. But that's basically having that song uploaded now with everything that's going on just felt too awkward. And that's the only song that I have a history of writing that was racially charged. And it was literally about a police killing that had happened around that time. I don't remember which one, so don't ask me. But I remember there was a lot of people on campus writing songs and poems and, different things about that at the time. And, I didn't have any controversy going on with race where I had ever said anything racially charged. So I didn't feel bad about writing that poem. Anyways, it's deleted now, so you won't see it on my YouTube, but you will still see Love Thyself and ADHD. It's literally the first 2 videos posted to my YouTube. And I also had lock videos posted back in the day as well, in my early 20s, but I deleted those when I combed out my dreads. I had dreads 3 times in my life, and I combed it out all 3 times. But I've been natural since my early 20s. Once I started learning about natural hair and how to take care of my natural hair, I really fell in love with natural hair. So I've had different natural hair journeys. And right now I'm actually just a loose natural. And that's basically what I've been for most of my life. Anyways, so back to this apartment. So at this time, I am still under the alias of New Lily. That's my Hebrew name on Facebook. And in parentheses, I had the Sharifa Nurse. So I recorded those 3 songs as well as the song with my sister about the Most High. And when we listened back, we're like, wow, this sounds actually really dope. Like, it was surprising because we didn't know that it would sound so good. I had never recorded myself professionally, had never attempted to, had never even thought about doing it. And so when this happened, I remembered us just being shocked that it sounded so good. Like, wow, okay. And so for me, I already knew I was a lyricist, and I'm not saying that in a cocky way, but when you're good at something, and that's if nothing else is what I'm good at is writing. That's what I've always been good at. And from what I understand, typically people with Asperger's, especially females, are really good writers because that's how we express ourselves. We're not good at socializing with people. So even though you can hear me speak well and record, whatever on these videos, when it comes to socializing with people in person, I'm really bad at it. And over the years, I learned to assimilate and mask, that's what it's called in the community, and basically, function. But I have always had trouble with socializing, which also played a part in my alcoholism, if I'm being honest. I even remember telling my mom that in my early 20s. So anyways, so I've always known that I was a good writer, especially when it comes to poetry. Like I've even been told that I could be a ghostwriter. Like those people that write lyrics for rappers, and then they get paid like pennies for their lyrics. But for me, I would never do that because it's like I'm never giving away my poetry and my words for you to pay me pennies. That's ridiculous. Anyway, so I knew I was a good writer, but I didn't know that I would sound good. That's all I'm saying. I knew I could rap. I knew I had a cadence, but I had never heard myself back. And so when I heard myself back, this is where I was like, okay, cool. This could be a thing, that kind of way. But it was still just a hobby. It wasn't like, I'm going to be the next, big rapper or anything like that. The next Nicki Minaj or anything like that. It was more so just like, okay, cool. I actually sound good. Let me do this. This is fun. Like that. And I remember I wasn't even taking it seriously. As a matter of fact, I want to show you guys something just now. I wasn't taking it serious back then at all, like not at all. It was just a hobby for me. When I posted Love Thyself and ADHD, and I had also posted Black Rage on my Instagram, around that time I had like around 3K followers, nothing major, that's quite a bit for a nobody, but still not even, I know nobodies that have 40K followers and up. So I only had like 3K followers on Instagram. And I remembered when I posted it, the videos, I got like 2K, 3K views, something like that. And so I did start to get a little traction, but nothing major. And so I remembered a few producers in Miami writing me, like this guy named Cool People. And he had really nice music. I had this guy in Atlanta write me. And then I also had this guy down here on this island I'm from kind of writing me too, telling me that he could help me clean up on my sound basically, because I had started recording myself after those videos that I had gotten professionally recorded. I basically downloaded BandLab because my brother-in-law had BandLab, and he said, well, Rifi, if you're too scared to go into the studio, you can record your own music. And so he was telling me about BandLab, and that's where he did his own recordings. And so I created a BandLab because I did have producers reaching out, like Cool People, trying to link up, and telling me basically that if we linked up, we could make some music together. And of course I would always kind of write them, but then never do it, like chicken out kind of way. That's to tell you I wasn't taking the thing seriously. But I was like, why don't I try to record myself? When my brother-in-law told me about that. And so I remembered I created the BandLab, and then this guy from Atlanta had wrote me, and he was basically telling me, let's create a song together. He said, so I do a verse, he do a verse. He would do a verse. And so I remember him telling me, let's do a song like about a king and a queen, and I would come from the queen's perspective and he would come from the king's perspective. And so I wrote my verse basically on BandLab, and then I remembered it didn't work out. Something ended up happening with him where we lost contact. And he actually like stopped coming on Instagram and everything. I think something personal in his life had happened, but he never wrote King. And so this is why I have Queen. I can show you right now. I'm going to show you right now. On my BandLab is one of the first songs I created, and it's literally just a verse. And then also I created Levels, which is one of my full poems. Is one of the first poems I created on BandLab. And I posted Levels to Instagram, and this is where the producer on this island wrote me and was basically telling me he can help me clean my sound up because he knew how to handle the producer stuff. For me, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Literally, I just played around with BandLab. Because I'm tech savvy, I was able to figure out how to use it enough to make my music sound decent, especially nowadays. It's like way better than back then, but even back then it was sounding good. Like if I let you hear Levels right now, it sounds good, even though you can hear that the audio's kind of off. But this is what was going on back then. And so I remember I created, let me go over there right now, as a matter of fact, to show you. Oh man, I deleted my BandLab to create more space. Let me pause the video. Thank goodness I can pause. I'm going to pause the video, guys, and just for you all to show you, because this is something that became a part of my targeting. So I do want to show this. I'm going to pause the video and re-download BandLab. I was trying to do some sort of video compilation. And I had too much storage taken up on my phone, so I deleted my BandLab temporarily. So I'm going to go ahead and re-upload it and show you what I'm talking about. So I'll be back. I'm going to pause the video. Okay, I'm back on, guys. So I just wanted to show you what was happening on BandLab. So this is a message that I got. I'm going to show you the songs that I was just referencing, the Levels and the Queen. But I want to show y'all how much I wasn't taking this thing seriously. This guy, Mob G South King, he wrote me a message on June 16th, 2019. He said, hey, that track dope. I don't know which one he was talking about, either Levels or Queen. I'm not sure which one. But he said, hey, that track dope. I like it. Keep grinding. If you can, a sec of your time, hear mines. I appreciate it. And he put a link to his song. And then he said, I may even do a free feature for you if you check out more of my newer songs, 100. I didn't answer him, and not maliciously either. I literally had stopped recording because I had so much going on back then. I was in school, a full load of classes. I was about to graduate. I was working 3 jobs. I was working at the post office as a carrier. I was a substitute teacher, and I was doing security at night. So this was literally a hobby. And even when I had producers reaching out to me, first of all, I felt too shy to link up with them. And then second of all, to me, I'm just like, this is not going anywhere. I'm not thinking about it as anything like that. It's more so just a hobby, like I said. And I was more so focused on my actual career and what I want to do with my life. So when this guy wrote me, I didn't even see the message. After a while, I had stopped signing on to BandLab. So just recently, as I started doing music again recently, when my targeting and stuff got so bad and I basically had given up on the job search, if you listen to my story, you'll hear about when I was sitting in here all day long for a good month or two, all day long just teaching myself how to code, trying to become a programmer or developer, and creating like a tech portfolio and just creating projects and stuff. A lot of noise campaign and different things were happening. The current kept being taken, just different things. I'm not going to really go into the details of that right now. But basically that was happening a lot, and then also too, I was applying to jobs like crazy on Indeed. I had hooked up my Indeed, I hooked up my LinkedIn. You can still check it out. Check out that video that I recently posted where I'm displaying my portfolio. If you click on the link and you go to my portfolio and you click on the links down below on the LinkedIn, shoot, I don't even have the link to my Indeed. I have my Indeed hooked up too. But if you check out the LinkedIn, you'll see I had really took my time and was trying to, put stuff together. And I was getting a lot of job offers too. I was applying to at-home call center jobs, all these different customer service jobs, jobs that I definitely qualify for and have worked before. And I kept getting like these different basically like the companies reaching out, and then I guess they would find out about my situation because everything's hacked, so the gang stalkers always reach out to whoever you try to contact. And so I recall that a lot of those companies would end up just kind of playing with my head. It would be this thing like where they'll pretend like they sent me an email and I missed it. And so I didn't get the opportunity, or I would get the email. I would have the interview and it'd be this weird gaslighting type of, it was just weird stuff to the point where I gave up after a while, even stopped working on the tech, on the portfolio, and also to the nano thing amped up. So I gave up and I just started making music again. Really, I was laying in here all day long. And one day I just got so sick of it, of them just kind of doing the noise campaigns and stuff. I just felt like, damn, they're always watching me. And so then I thought about the poem Watchers. I just started writing this poem called Watchers. And I hadn't written poetry in a while. Like I said, I've been writing poetry since younger. But when all of this stuff amped up, I had too much going on. I wasn't writing poetry. I'm not gonna lie, I hadn't written poetry in a while. And I sat there just laying on the bed, not doing anything. And that's when I wrote the poem Watchers. And then from there, I decided, well, let me get back on BandLab. And so I recorded Watchers. It sounded good. And then I started heavily recording music again. This was literally just 2 months ago. Check out all my newer songs that I posted. Literally, you'll see all started 2 months ago with me reposting my music. But it's nothing that I've taken serious, and I could have if I wanted to before I was even a target. If I really wanted to do something, I would have been trying to pursue something before being a target. That's what would make sense. But that's to tell you that this guy wrote me in 2019, and I only just saw the message when I started doing music again on June 8th. I just literally wrote this man and I said, wow, I'm just getting this. I've been off of BandLab for a while and just started making music again a few months ago. Can you resend the link, excuse me? It seems to be broken. Of course, he didn't answer. I'm sure they already reached out to him. But let me show you what this guy got going. I mean, he's not no celebrity, but he has quite a bit of followers. These are the type of people that was reaching out to me back then when I was making music. I think it's because I have a different sound, but not just that, because I'm a lyricist. More so than anything else, most of the messages I got was about the fact that my lyrics are dope. I'm a good writer. So anyways, he has 8.6K followers and 41.1K plays, so this guy has stuff going on BandLab. It's not like he's famous, but these are the type of people that were reaching out to me. Cool People had 100K or something like that, like a lot of stuff on his Instagram. He had a big following, and I remember actually that intimidating me. And so this is why I never reached out or actually linked up with him. So this is what I'm saying. I never took this thing seriously. I was more so into school and things of that nature. And then just a couple months ago when everything was happening and I felt like I was losing my mind in this room, I just literally wrote the song Watchers, decided to download my BandLab, recorded it. It sounded good. And then I started to just record again. I said, well, why don't I get back into music again? And this is literally what happened, because they started to kind of try to villainize my music and say I had an ominous sound. And then the stupid thing I did with my hand, you need to check out my new allegations video. They tried to tie it into my music when really it was just me being antagonized and responding in kind. I had a weird dream too, thought manipulation, just weird stuff. I'm not going to go into the details of it in this video because I'm starting to ramble and I do not want the summary to be too long. But check out my allegation video, which will also be posted. I'm probably going to post this before the allegation video. I will. But the allegation video will be posted after my full story video. So I'm going to post this. Then I'm going to post, excuse me, sorry, coming out of the messages. I'm going to post this video when I get a different internet source. I can't post it from the internet source that I'm on. And then I'm going to post my 7-part series. It's basically condensed into one video, like I said, but you're going to see the watermark on it. I'm sorry about that. But you can hear very clearly. The audio, I mean, the video quality is terrible anyways, because I recorded it on my cheaper computer, the computer that I still have. The computer that I typically record on, like I said, got confiscated. So you can check out my full story and you'll hear the details about the new allegations. I kind of touch on it in that. I think if I remember correctly, I did. Regardless, though, after I post that video, I'm going to post my new allegations video. So basically, I'm going to post the summary video. Then I'm going to post my 7-part series video that I condensed into one video, which is like 11 to 12 hours of content. And then I'm going to post my new allegations video after that. Anyways, let me just quickly show you guys the songs that I created back then, though, because I've created so many songs now in these last 2 months. just because I've been sitting in here doing nothing, losing my mind. So I have nothing but time on my hands. And this is why I've been doing that. And also to endless content because of what I'm going through. If, as a matter of fact, the music I'm making now doesn't even relate to the general population. You know, the music I'm making now really is for targeted individuals. This is why I had started creating the poetry breakdown series, because I know my music doesn't relate to the general population. And most people wouldn't even get my music if they weren't familiar with what I was going through or this program. So I literally had a 9-part poetry breakdown series, and that was deleted as well. I don't even know why that was deleted, because only in the 2 latter videos did I talk about personal stuff. In the other videos, I was more so just talking about the meaning of my poetry, but those videos were deleted as well. But yeah, this is what my poetry has been about, literally just a way for me to express myself with what I've been dealing with. Anyways, these are the 2 videos, one video, excuse me, that I created back then, The Queen. It's a verse, so check it out when you get a chance, you know. If you check out my other poetry videos, in the description box and in the comment section, I put a link to my band lab, so you can check these songs out for yourself. But you can see June 16th, 2019, that was when Queen was created. And then Levels is up here because I added in the lyrics just recently. But even so, you can see, you see June 13th was when it was created. And then you can see I just edited it on March 15th when I put the lyrics in. And so this is what happened. You know, I created those 2 songs on BandLab, and then literally things just picked up. You know, I had just recently started working at the post office as a carrier. That's the hardest job I've ever worked in my life, even harder than teaching. Very difficult job, and not just physically difficult, as in like having to walk, you know, in the hot sun and to different businesses and houses through neighborhoods, dropping off like copious amounts of mail, but then also having to have a good mindset about you too, because you have to have good sense of direction. You have to be able to, you know, route out the different routes and the different houses and the different mail. It's sort through the mail. It's so much mail. It's just like, I don't know, like anybody that does that job, I have major respect for them. I keep saying that because I've worked so many different jobs and in so many different career fields, and out of all of them, the hardest job I've ever worked was being a post office carrier. And I don't even think they get paid enough. You know, I remember I was getting paid like $17.45 or something like that, and at the time, that was the most money I had ever made, but it was still, I think, not enough with what the job entails. It's ridiculous. But anyways, all of that was going on, you know? So I had all of that going on, full load of classes, and this was just a hobby for me, on top of the fact that I'm super shy. So I never took it seriously. So when they tried to insinuate certain things with my music recently, I just thought it was hilarious to me, because if I really wanted to try to make this thing popping, I would have done it when I had the opportunity, not now that I'm targeted and everyone hates my guts. But anyways, this is literally just a hobby for me and an escape, basically, you can say, and a way to express myself. Anyway, so I forgot what I was gonna say. Now my mind is feeling muddled. Let me come out of this and finish my story though. I just wanted to add that into the story because I think I didn't even go into the details about it in the full story. I did talk about it, but I don't think I even went into the details of it because I didn't have the screen recording where I could show you my band lab, you know? And so this is what I wanted to make sure that I did. Let me see where I'm at now. I'm an hour and 6 minutes. And I remember I said I wanted it to not be more than an hour and a half. So let me try to speed through the latter part of the story. Let me see if I can do that. Anyway, so where was I? So that was happening before I left the dorms. You know, that was in 2019. Also, at this time, I had I talked, you know what, I'm not going to go into details about that. I talked about my near-death experiences and my full story. So please check out my full story because I've had several near-death experiences, which is also why I felt like witchcraft or something spiritual was at play. And the Most High literally keeps saving me. I'm not going to talk about it in this video, though, just for the sake of time. Even with the accidents, when the accidents started happening, because those were not my only near-death experiences. I talked about all of them in my full story, and all of the signs of witchcraft that I've been experiencing, even the humiliation, being seen naked, all of these different things. I touched on those in my full story, the 7-part, 11-hour video that I combined together. So please, if you have the time, check it out. I'm just going to brush over that stuff, though, even the 3 accidents that I've been in. So anyways, so yeah, 2020 comes now. Well, it's still 2019, you know, 2019, this is the beginning of 2019 was the music stuff. So like midway through now in 2019, I decided that, you know, for this last year or whatever, these last few semesters, I don't want to be in the dorms anymore. And so I was just like, I want my own place. You know, I'm a big grown woman, 27 at this point. I don't feel like I should be staying crunched up in a dorm, you know, with a roommate, 2 at that, because I remember my sister was my roommate and then I had another roommate. And then at one point in time, my sister wasn't my roommate and I had 2 random roommates. And then too, the bathroom situation was just gnarly. And then at night, the loud partying, which again I understood, but not what I wanted to be around at the time with everything I had going on. I was just like, let me try and get an apartment. So I remember talking with my mom and telling her I wanted an apartment, and things were expensive. So could she help me look? And then I remembered her suggesting me instead leasing out, like not leasing out, excuse me, getting Airbnbs. Because apartments, if you're familiar with South Florida, are extremely expensive in South Florida. And that's because Florida is a beautiful place. It's like the vacation state, the sunshine state, excuse me. So most people want to live in Florida. So it's extremely expensive, especially South Florida. And so I remember that being difficult. And it's not that I couldn't afford it. I was working 3 different jobs, but I would have really been penny pinching if I had tried to get a job at that time. So I remember my mom saying, why don't I do Airbnbs instead? And so this is what I decided to do. And so I remember every week she would be helping me find Airbnbs and then I would be paying for it. And so I remember, like every week or every other week I would have to move because it wasn't long-term Airbnbs. It got so bad. I'm not bad as in like it was horrible what was happening. I was having a good experience at these Airbnbs, high rating and everything, even to the point where I stayed in people's homes. Sometimes people rent out a room from their home. I stayed in countless homes like that and I kept getting high ratings. Oh, Sharif is polite, Sharif is this. I had a video, literally, that was one of the videos that got deleted, where I displayed some of those comments that I got on my Airbnb. I'm not about to download Airbnb again and show that. I don't care that much. But I had a video, for those of you that have been following me, I think you saw it, where I was showing those comments. And the reason I feel the need to specify that is because what ended up happening, and they like to do noise campaign when I talk about what ended up happening. So I feel the need to mention that I had stayed in for a good 4 to 5 months, all these different Airbnbs, shared Airbnbs, in people's homes, all things of that nature with no issue. And then out of nowhere, like shortly before graduation, this random, weird thing happens. So anyways, after staying in Airbnbs, like I said, and having to constantly move to the point where I even gave away some of my clothes because I had so much clothes and it was just hard moving with all of that clothes. I do remember complaining to my mom, about how strenuous it was moving all the time, and her suggesting to me that why don't I get a long-term Airbnb? So in other words, speaking with the host that I had at the time and seeing if he would be willing to keep me in a long-term Airbnb, almost like a lease situation, but with no lease. So less obligation, that kind of way. So that's what I did. I spoke with the host and him and I had a good repertoire anyways. And he told me, sure, no problem. He said that I was a really good guest, and that he had done this before for a prior college student. And basically she stayed there her whole time in college. And so he basically told me that I could move to the dorm that he had that girl staying in. And so he moved me from the unit that he had that girl staying in. So he moved me from the unit that he had me in, which I really regret. I wish he had just kept me in that unit, that initial unit. That was perfect, that unit he had me in. But I think he didn't want to rent out that unit long term. I think that's why he moved me. So he ended up moving me to this unit that was connected to this other unit, literally by a connecting door. And in this unit, the one that I was staying in, there was a bathroom, and the bathroom was right next to the connecting door to the other unit. And in the other unit next door stayed an elderly couple. So I remember when he moved me, I had no issue with that. I, at this time, hadn't had any issues, any of the issues that are about to start in the story. And I actually was glad to have neighbors, so I had no issue with that. The only problem I was having was the bathroom. So if you recall earlier in the story, I told you I have a bathroom OCD. Actually, I had a family member tell me, a couple years ago before I was a target, that my OCD actually makes sense. He was talking about the fact that he had read an article that was saying every time you flush the toilet, there are particles floating for a good 30 minutes. And so literally you are literally swallowing like toilet water or whatever when you have the bathroom door open. So my OCD does kind of make sense. I'm not totally nuts. There's some type of method to the madness. But anyways, so I do recall that the bathroom was a sliding door and the space in between the sliding door was huge. It was like this huge gap and I kept smelling the toilet, and it wasn't a stink toilet. This man definitely kept his units nice and clean. It was just that I kept smelling the toilet and I kept smelling the bathroom. And then also too, those type of bathrooms, you usually like to keep the door, because the way the apartment was so insulated, it wasn't like you had open, fresh air coming in. If you kept the sliding door closed, which is what I was doing because I don't like having bathrooms open, the bathroom starts to get this stuffy smell, in addition to the fact that I already smell bathrooms anyway. So I remember I was really smelling the bathroom and it was really bothering me. Like I literally couldn't even eat or drink in the apartment because I was smelling the bathroom. So I remember complaining to my mom about the door and her telling me, well, why don't I ask him to move me to another unit? And I remember not wanting to go through that. And now in retrospect, that's another decision that I wish I had just done. Maybe that would have made things be different. Who knows? Anyways, so I just decided instead that I would take the comforter off the bed and that I would stuff up the cracks. This is what I thought in my head would be a good idea, that I could just take the comforter and stuff up the cracks to the sliding door. And then also too, this was around summertime, so it was hot, South Florida. And I had the AC pumping. So I'm like, I don't need the comforter. I had a sheet on the bed. I'm like, I don't need the comforter. And so I remember thinking that, okay, I figured this thing out. That's a good idea. So I grab the comforter and I start stuffing up the cracks. And literally, as I'm stuffing up the cracks to the sliding door, remember again, I said this bathroom was right next to the connecting door. I start hearing the elderly couple on the other side of the connecting door starting to like push stuff up against the door. They're acting like they're locking the door. And at this point, to my knowledge, the door wasn't even usable. I thought the lock was broken, so I don't even understand what they were locking, because on my end, the thing didn't even look like it could open. The door looked like it wouldn't even be able to budge or open. So they were there doing stuff like that, pushing stuff up against the door. They had this little chihuahua or whatever, small dog, barking and just weird stuff, right? So I felt bad. I instantly felt bad because I'm somebody that cares what people think, especially back then. At this point now, with me being targeted and everything I've been through, I kind of don't give a rat's ass. I still do, actually, but I kind of don't. But I remember back then I really cared what people thought. And I remember feeling so freaking bad about it. The fact that they might have thought that I was trying to do something by the door, whatever they felt like was happening. But still, I didn't think it would create a situation for me. I just felt like that moment was awkward. An embarrassing moment that happens where your cheeks turn red and then it goes away. That's the kind of thing I thought was happening there. So anyways, I sit on the bed now, and I notice after that, like every time I'm moving in the room, they're making noises on the other side of the door, literally like pushing stuff up against the door. Just these weird type of monitoring type, like monitoring spirit type thing where they're like listening out for if I'm moving. I didn't even have to be interacting with the bathroom at this point. I couldn't even go in the fridge comfortably and eat without them making noises. It was terrible. I didn't even feel comfortable. I felt I had never dealt with anything like this in a living situation in my life. There was an incident at Walmart that I talked about in my full story, which is also what I kind of connected to something that happened to the roommate. I'm not going to go into the details about what happened to her, but I talked about it in my full story, which made me feel like witchcraft also, which was my first situation dealing with a monitoring spirit. And this was before I left Tallahassee, when I was still at the community college and stuff, living with my sister. But we had already moved out from the roommate. I did start to work at Walmart back then. And I do remember this situation that arose out of pure incidents, kind of like this situation here in this Airbnb with this elderly couple. Basically where my sister had come in to purchase some Pampers, and she was basically trying to use a check to do it. You know how you can do that at some grocery stores or retail stores where you use the check, pay for the item that you're paying for, and then get the remainder of the check, and you do that to cash the check. And so I remember her trying to do that at my register, and me calling the CSM over. It's not even like the CSM came over and like saw me doing this. It was literally me. I called the CSM over to ask her how to do it, and then I remembered her telling me to turn off my light. She took my sister over to the money center, and then too also before she came to my register, my sister, I had followed her to the diaper aisle. Because she's my sister, and it was an empty Walmart. The Walmart I worked at was out in the suburbs. So even though it was a super Walmart, it wasn't really packed. So I do remember following her to the diaper aisle and just kind of playing with my niece, punching my sister's arm, just stupid playful stuff. And I think all then the asset protection man was probably watching me, and I didn't know it because I wasn't doing anything wrong. So I didn't feel like, the need to act, any kind of way. I didn't really feel like this would create a situation for me. And so then I remember after calling the CSM over, after walking my sister back from the diaper aisle and trying to do the transaction, I remember the CSM telling me to turn my light off. She walked my sister over to the money center, and then the asset protection man literally came up to my register and just stood there, glared at me and snarled at me. And he was a big burly man. And so I remember that really intimidating me. And then after that situation, the CSM came over and just adamantly told me don't ever cash a check at the register. And I told her, sure, no problem. I had never had an issue in that Walmart before. This was like my second month working there. And so I remember after that, the asset protection man literally was stalking me, like from register to register every day for the duration of my time working at this Walmart. And I worked there for a good 4 or 5 months after that. I remember that whole time there, this man literally was casing me and just making sure that I was having eye contact with him and seeing that he was watching me. And I hadn't done anything wrong. I remember feeling so awkward in that situation. I talked about it in my full story in more detail and how it connected with the roommate, or how I felt it connected with the roommate, and how it was like another odd coincidence. But I do remember just kind of feeling like that was my first monitoring experience and feeling like that might have been something spiritual. And then I'll fast forward to age 27, where I'm here now staying in Airbnbs next to this elderly couple, and this weird monitoring type of situation is happening again. And I'm just kind of like, what the hell? Another weird monitoring spirit. You know, I hadn't again encountered that in years. I hadn't encountered something like that in years. And then now all of a sudden, shortly before graduation, this is happening. So I remember thinking it was weird, and it reminded me of that situation because it was literally something that derived from an innocent action that turned into this big thing. So I remember that just being very uncomfortable. You know, the elder couple would not stop. Just constantly, like every time I move in, they're moving. Just basically letting me know that they're monitoring me. And listening in on me. You know, basically that type of thing like that. And so I remember talking to my mom about it because I felt really uncomfortable, and I also talked to my sister about it, and I remember them laughing at me and basically saying, just thinking it's a refugee thing. Because as I said, I do have Asperger's. And I am somewhat of a hypochondriac, you know, somebody that fears illnesses, that has OCDs, and that's just kind of finicky, but not really finicky to the point where I'm getting in problems with people. Not at all. Like I said, the only issue prior to this thing with this elderly couple was that cyber stalking, cyberbullying situation that I dealt with, where quite a few people on island kind of turned against me. That did turn into a very bad situation for me, actually, if you listen to my full story. But aside from that, I had never really had issues with people. You know, so it just started to be this thing in my early 20s where these weird situations kept arising, where it created like this horrible situation or scenario for me that kind of extended and wouldn't end, kind of is what it felt like. These weird situations that blew up way bigger than I would have ever imagined. So anyways, this was another one of those type of situations because literally I could not function comfortably in this apartment because of what was happening next door with the noise campaigns. And this is at what I would call it, you know, even though I wasn't a target yet, now that I'm a target, you know, and I'm experiencing what noise campaign is, I would compare what this elderly couple was doing to me in that Airbnb to noise campaigns. Let me see where I'm at with the time. Trying to hurry up, trying to speed through. Because this is the summary. You know, I have the full story. I want the summary to be done. I don't want it to be too long. Damn, 10 minutes. I don't know how the hell. This is probably going to at least be an hour and 40 minutes long. I think I can fit the rest of the story into 20 minutes. So let me speed up. So anyways, eventually told my mom and my sister, and they were laughing at me basically and just thinking it's a Sharifa thing. Even with the Walmart situation, I remember my sister kind of saying, oh, come on, Rifi, I'm sure that man is not following you. And then if you listen to my full story, you know, I confirmed that he was following me. But I'm not going to talk about it anymore in this video. So they were just laughing at me and telling me that they would be moving on the bed and they would be doing this and that, and they wouldn't have gave a rat's ass basically, and they didn't know why I cared so much. So anyways, after the discomfort there, you know, long enough, you know, I stayed there for about a month or 2 months and just couldn't take it anymore. I remember asking my Airbnb host to move me, and he was still very kind to me. You know, there was no shift in his attitude as if anything weird had happened. You know, he didn't make it seem like anything weird had happened. And he just gladly moved me. And of course, I didn't tell him why because I really didn't even know how to explain the situation to him. And so I just asked him if he could move me to Airbnb closer to the school because his units were in Miami and my school was located in Miami Gardens. So I remember him moving me to another unit in Miami, but one that was a little bit closer to my school. And so I remember at this unit, again, there were other units around, which I was glad to have neighbors. I have to keep reiterating that because now they kind of make it seem like I'm trying to isolate. I am now, after everything I've been through. I do want to go live in the forest, in the bush, in the boonies, and shield off and not be bothered by people, but that wasn't the case back then. So I was glad to have neighbors. And I remember that the unit he moved me to didn't have any connecting door, but it did have a storage unit that was connected to my Airbnb and was separated by a concrete wall. So basically inside the unit, you know, there was like this concrete wall in my room, and on the other side of the concrete wall was the storage room. You know, it was like a set of units that he had set up basically, and almost like a circle kind of on this compound, and the storage room just happened to be connected to my Airbnb. And so I remember at this time I was dating this Colombian guy, and I remembered asking him to move in with me. And they always do noise campaign at this part, and I really don't know why. They try to play it like I use men or I date men that I don't like, and that's not the case. That wasn't the case at all. And actually, I had really liked this guy, and I remembered my family were the ones that were kind of concerned about the relationship. And the reason being was because he basically came from a rich family, but he was one of those kind of like those kids that come from the suburbs that try to act bad. Like, I can't really explain it. I haven't really gone into the details of it in my other videos, but they keep doing noise campaign every time I talk about it. So I don't know if they're insinuating that I didn't like him like that or if he was bad for me. I don't know what the insinuation is. But anyways, he was basically like one of those guys that come from the suburbs that try to act bad or whatever, try to act out or whatever the case is. And so that's, I think, why they're doing the noise campaign. I don't know. I really don't. But whatever the case is, I had asked him to stay with me because I didn't want to stay by myself. And so I remembered him staying with me. And I definitely, again, wasn't using him because he was rich. I remember he even had this big black truck that his dad gave him. Like, this is the type of life this man was living. So I wasn't using him at all by asking him to come live with me. If anything, then I would have went and lived with him. So anyways, I remembered him coming to stay with me because I asked him to, because I just felt awkward about what happened in the first Airbnb. And so he did come and stay with me. And so we would hear this maintenance man in that same storage room that I'm talking about. We would hear him all the time in there, even at night. Like, it was almost as if he was staying in this freaking storage room to monitor us. And the reason I have to say to monitor us, because maybe, it was just a case where he had this deal with the guy where he would stay in the storage room, but that doesn't make sense. Well, all the units this man had, and I already took a peek into the storage room out of curiosity because of hearing this man in there all the time. It was a real storage room and it was very small. So to me, it felt like he was staying in there monitoring. So I don't know if this elderly couple went back and told my Airbnb host about that first initial day, what they had heard with the bathroom door situation. I really don't know what happened, but the host didn't act different with me. It's not like he tried to kick me out. He definitely just moved me to another unit. But I did feel like we were being monitored by this maintenance man. I even pointed it out to my ex and he noticed it too. And so he just thought it was funny. He didn't think it was a big deal. He was still moving comfortably and I was there moving, like, acting weird. And so I remember, basically, I stayed in that Airbnb for a couple months, and then I decided to move from that Airbnb to an Airbnb that was owned by someone in my close circle. So this is where I'll start saying in my close circle instead of specifying the relationship between the person I'm talking about. So I decided to move to this Airbnb with some of my close circle. At this time I had stopped talking to the Colombian guy because he had a bad temper, and he almost crashed a car on the highway because of his bad temper. It wasn't anything with me not liking him. So basically, and basically, guys, where that derives from is a stupid situation with one of my first exes. Basically, there's two. Oh God, it's just tiring going through the details of this. I've dated so many men in my life, guys, like off of my two hands and off of my 2 feet. So I don't know why this is this narrative they're trying to spin. But there's literally 3 guys out of all of those guys that I dated that I had no physical attraction to. And then there was my ex who wasn't my type. I was physically attracted to him. And the ex I'm talking about is the one in Tallahassee that I talked about in my full story. I didn't talk about him in this video. So if you want the details about that story, this is the guy that took my virginity. And there's a big, long drop back story with him. You're going to have to listen to the full story. Unless you're already familiar with the story. A lot of you that are subscribed to me have already heard my story. But basically, this guy in my early 20s that took my virginity, one of my first serious boyfriends, that had lived with me in an apartment for almost a year. He was my type. He wasn't my type, excuse me, but I was attracted to him. But what happened is I basically was living with him for almost a year. And I started feeling tied down in the relationship because I was 18, and I had just moved up to college. This was before the roommate came up to live with my sister and I. When I first went up there to Tallahassee to live with my sister, I met him really quickly because my sister and I kept going to the club and meeting guys. And I remember when I met him, because of the kind of personality I have, especially in person, it takes like a special kind of guy for me to feel comfortable. And he had just the perfect personality for me. And so I remember us having a lot of chemistry. And although he wasn't my type physically, at least not what my type had become, and I'm going to explain that very quickly, he wasn't what my type had become. He was what my type used to be. And so I was physically attracted to him. It's not like I wasn't physically attracted to him. He just wasn't what my type had become. And so basically I felt tied down into the relationship, and it had nothing to do with how he looked, and it had everything to do with the fact that we were living together and moving like a married couple. And I wanted to get out and explore and just be single, at 18, I just felt like I liked him so bad, it was just like this comfort that him and I both had. And we were even staying up all night talking to the point where my sister was getting annoyed with us because we were cracking up all night through the wall. And she said it was annoying her. But it was just like, I just felt like it was like too serious. This is how I felt. And this is before what happened even happened. So then I went home for Christmas vacation, and this is why they're trying to paint it like I'm a bad person, and this is why they try to spin the narrative of me using guys that I don't like that, and that's not the case. And then basically when I went home, I saw this guy. I feel so awkward talking about this, but basically this guy from high school that I had like this long-standing friendship with, almost 2 to 3 years, where him and I talked on the phone all night long. And we had classes together, just different stuff like that, and he kind of used to seem like he liked me, but he was super immature and I couldn't tell. And so I liked him really bad, that guy, and actually fell for him, like you could say my first experience with love, but not true love, puppy love. So you know how detrimental that can be at that age. So I do remember at that time that my type had kind of transitioned into what this guy looked like. And so this is why they're trying to make it like I'm this vain person, when really it was more so about the man than the look. It was more so about the guy than the look. It was something about his personality that really clicked with mine's. I mean, that's really what it was, more so than the look. It's just that's what that look now became my type, because this is who I fell for. So anyways, when I saw him, I got butterflies. He had saw me driving my mom's car. He called me, gave me his number, got the butterflies. And for me, it just solidified what I had already been feeling, that I was too soon for me to be tied down in such a serious relationship. And so when I told that in my prior stories, oh my God, they ran with that. And they try to make it seem like I'm this person that dates men I don't like and uses them. And that's not the case. There's literally 3 guys in my life that I've dated that I had no physical attraction to. And this ex that took my virginity wasn't one of them. He wasn't my type at the time, what my type had become, but I was physically attracted to him. So I feel like I need to specify that. There was this ex, and they made noise campaign when I talked about this yesterday, because I never mentioned this ex in any of my prior stories, but I did mention him yesterday. Basically, there was my first boyfriend in high school. And how could you use that against somebody? Their first boyfriend in 9th grade? Are you kidding me? I was 15 at the time, and the man was 21, right? So he was older than me, not much older, but he was older than me. And I had no physical attraction to him. And it wasn't even that he was a bad looking dude. It wasn't that. He just was not physically my type. That happens. Everyone has a type. I'm not physically a lot of guys' type. So who cares? How does that make me a bad person? I don't understand that. But I do remember being young. I was only 15 at the time, and I had just started becoming a woman. In other words, going through puberty, dressing like a girl, because like I said, I've always been athletic, really trying to fix myself up, going out, meeting guys, getting numbers, and he was just happened to be one of the first guys that hit on me, and we hit it off because he had such a freaking cool personality. Cool personality, down to earth, witty, smart, it was really his brain, I keep saying this, that pulled me in. And then also too, he really smelled good, he dressed nice, he had swag, just a cool guy, and then the older guy, allure of that too. That's what it was, but I wasn't physically attracted to him based off of what I like. And I'm not even just saying that, I would be honest and say if he wasn't an attractive person, it wasn't even that, it literally wasn't even that he wasn't an attractive guy. It was literally, he just wasn't my type, what I'm physically attracted to. I'm usually attracted to athletic men because I'm an athletic woman, and he wasn't necessarily athletic, which isn't a big deal, but this is why I wasn't physically attracted to him. But I was attracted to him. You got what I'm saying? So I wasn't vain. If I was vain, I would have never dated him. So I was attracted to him. I just wasn't physically attracted to him. And that's not even why I broke up with him. It had nothing to do with his looks and something to do that with a situation that happened with my friend. I'm not going to go into the details of it. But this is the things they use, stupid, petty things like that to villainize me. It's always stuff like that, like these things that don't make sense that everyday girls go through that they try to use against me and villainize me. Anyways, I forgot what I was saying now, though. So fast forward to where I'm at in the story. Where was I at? So now I'm to the 3rd Airbnb, and I had broken up with the Colombian guy because of his temper. And so now I'm in the 3rd Airbnb, and it belongs to someone in my close circle. So I'm no longer staying in the Airbnb for that guy where I stayed in the 2 Airbnbs for him and had the weird monitoring spirit experience. I'm now in a 3rd Airbnb for someone in my close circle, totally unrelated, thinking for sure I'm going to be good to go. Let me try to speed through, guys. Let me see where I'm at with the time. My gosh. This is how the time flies with these stories, and this is the summary, so I do not want this to be too long. Where are we at? Hour 32. Okay, let me try and speed through. So remember, guys, I'm still in Florida. At this point, I think I'm age 28, shortly before graduation, still on campus, about to graduate, working 3 jobs, left the dorms, stayed in Airbnbs for a while, no issue. Then all of a sudden, in these 2 different Airbnbs for this host that I stayed with that was really kind to me, I had these weird, almost spiritual seeming monitoring spirit experiences. Now I'm in the 3rd Airbnb with that belongs to a person in my close circle, and I'm thinking for sure I'm not going to deal with that again. So basically, she put me in the private. Her Airbnb, she had just purchased basically this house, not purchased it, rented it. And it was a 3 bedroom, really 4 bedroom, but the fourth bedroom was more so like a separate apartment that I stayed in. But basically, it was this house that had 3 bedrooms, a bathroom, a living space, and then a living room space, and then a kitchen. And then off of the kitchen was a connecting door to a fourth room. And so the fourth room more so served as a private, because if you stayed in that fourth room, you didn't ever have to go into the main house. That fourth room had a door where you can exit out on private entry and get out and basically not have to go into the main house. But the only reason that I would venture through the connecting door was to go into the kitchen and utilize the fridge. I didn't even use the stove. This is to tell you I didn't want to interact with anyone. I wanted my own privacy and space. It's to the point where I had my own stove. I had an electrical stove. And really what I wanted was my own place. I wanted neighbors, of course, but I didn't want to live with anybody because of some of the things I had experienced, especially in those 2 prior Airbnbs. But I definitely made sure at this point that I only went in there to utilize the fridge. So I remembered when I moved into this Airbnb, the person in my close circle even stayed with me for a few nights just to make sure I settled in good and everything was fine. Then her first official guest, because I didn't really count since I'm in her close circle. I do count. I was paying her, but her first official guest, someone that she didn't know, came to stay in the main house in one of the bedrooms. And this lady came down from Chicago. Not that that matters, but I'm just letting you know. So anyway, she stayed there the first night when this lady moved in. The person in my close circle, she stayed in the room with me, the private room. And both she and I heard how loud this lady was being. And again, it wasn't in a negative way, because I know at this point now I probably sound like a negative Betty. Like everywhere people are being loud. I've never had an issue with noises. Trust me. I used to party. I used to be a party animal. I remember this guy I was dating back in high school called me a party animal. Like I was going to the club every weekend and stuff. So I'm not no Betty, what is it? Negative Betty, that's like cranky. And I used to like to go out, even Juve parade, all those things. So I don't have an issue with noises. But again, understand at this time I was older. I was age 28. I was working 3 really hard jobs, especially the post office job. And then I had a full load of classes. And then one of the jobs I was working was a night job. So those times when I had opportunities to sleep, I needed quiet. And so this is what was happening around this time. This is why I had a noise sensitivity around this time. So anyways, this lady was super loud this night. Like she was partying, literally, like not even just loud as in like, okay, you're being too loud for me, loud for anyone. I remember the person in my close circle even being like, oh my gosh, she was slamming the cabinets. I think she was drunk. She had people over. I think she was partying, and that's understandable. Florida's a nice state. You came down from Chicago, and actually I really like Chicago, by the way. You're going to hear later in the story where I got to see Chicago. Chicago, if it weren't for what I experienced, would be a place where I could see myself living. And I'm a small city kind of girl, but I could see myself living in the big city in Chicago because I really liked it. But anyways, but she came down from Chicago, and that's up north, and now you're coming to the Sunshine State. So of course you want to vacation and party and stuff. So I understand that, but she was being ridiculously loud for somebody that's in a shared Airbnb. So anyways, we kind of just left it alone because we knew it was her first night, and we didn't think that this would be like a continuous thing. So after the person in my close circle left the next day, I noticed this to be like a habitual thing with her, not the partying. It didn't sound like she was partying every night, but just being kind of like this night owl type of person. I didn't feel like she was monitoring me. Nothing like what was happening in the other 2 Airbnbs. There was no connection there. I didn't feel like she was making noises when I moved. I don't even think the lady was paying attention to me. She was more so just out there being loud. Like she's a night owl. She's slamming in and out of the front door. She's in the kitchen. The kitchen is right next to my room. Remember, I had a connecting door next to the kitchen. She's slamming the cabinets, talking on the phone loud while she's in the kitchen. Things of that nature. And I'm somebody that's a very light sleeper. So I already sleep. I'm a light sleeper. My sleeping schedule is kind of off because I'm now working night shift security. And then to boot, I think this is something that's genetic. I have a parent that stays up late at night, like hardly sleeps. And that's kind of what happens to me. Not that I stay up late at night. I sleep. What the difference is that I wake up. So sometimes I'll wake up twice in the night. Often it would just be back in the day before I was at Target, once or twice, and I just roll over, get back to sleep. Sometimes might stay up, but for the most part, roll over, get back to sleep. But when things started happening, weird, things with the monitoring spirit, and you're gonna hear how I really turned into like a night owl myself, almost like insomnia, to the point where I wake up at night and then it's like hours before I get back to sleep. Sometimes I don't even get back to sleep until the morning time. But that wasn't the case before. It would be this thing where I wake up, go back to sleep type of thing. So anyways, this was the case, and I was a very light sleeper, and then dealing with everything that I was dealing with at the time. I remember this lady just being very loud, not partying or anything like that. Again, let me reiterate that, but just being like a night owl and slamming through the kitchen and just on the phone super loud and just waking me up. Or if I'm waking up, I'm hearing her. And obviously I'm waking up because I heard her. So I remember telling my sis, I remember telling the person in my close circle about it. And basically the person in my close circle told her husband because the two of them were running the Airbnb together. And so I remember that the person in my close circle basically told me that her husband would deal with it and that her husband had spoken to the lady and that she was so sorry. And I knew she was always mannerful to me. Whenever I would see her outside in passing, I always tell her good morning, good afternoon, same thing, no issue. It wasn't like somebody that was rude and obnoxious or anything like that. So when she was told, I even felt bad about ratting on her. I felt guilty about ratting on her because she was a nice lady, but I needed my sleep. So I remember her being nice about it, no issue. She quieted right down, still up at night, but it's not like an issue, not slamming through stuff, no problem. So about a month passes now, no issue with the lady, no issue with me. I only venture over there again, like I said, to get stuff out the fridge. It's to the point where I was eating, at this time I was doing the keto diet. So I was eating a lot of wraps and stuff. Like I would make like kale wraps and things of that nature, things I didn't even have to cook. Even though I had an electrical stove in my room. So I would literally just go over there to get my drinks, and my food. So I remember this night now I had went over there. It had been a month of no issues, basically. And I went over there. It was like around 7 or 8. And I remember crossing over the threshold, going in the fridge, getting my food like I did every night, going back to my room, closing the door. And typically when I went back over, I would lock the door as I closed it so she wouldn't hear me. Just because I didn't want her to hear me locking the door and think like, it's like I already ratted on her and then now I'm locking the door like she's going to come and do something. I didn't want to seem like, like some type of bougie, like annoying bitch. I didn't want to seem that way. And so this is why I purposely like did not lock the door. This is why I purposely made sure to lock the door whenever I would go through it, whenever I would come back. I wouldn't do it after the fact. So I remember this night I had forgot to lock the door. And I sat down. Another one of those moments that I think back in retrospect, and if I had done this differently, maybe things would have gone different. I feel like after I ate, once I realized that I forgot to lock the door, if I had just got up and locked it loudly, it wouldn't have been an issue. But I think it's the fact that I tried to lock it quietly because I didn't want to offend her. I literally heard her sitting right there on the couch. And she had been on the couch when I had went out there into the fridge. I didn't want to offend her. And so I remember trying to lock the door quietly. And as I'm trying to lock the door, I hear her make a noise with her phone. Again, I said she was sitting on the couch, right there next to the kitchen. So I knew she was in there. And I did not want to offend her by locking the door quietly. So I tried to do it loudly, excuse me. So I tried to do it quietly and she heard me. And so this created another situation where I should have just locked that damn shit loudly and not cared. So I heard her kind of like turn up the thing on her phone. And so I remember feeling like kind of weird about it because it was reminiscent of what had happened at the Airbnbs, except not as extreme. But I still remember sitting on the bed kind of thinking like, okay, maybe you're overthinking the situation. But then I noticed after that, every time I would move, similar to the other Airbnbs, she would start to make a noise out there. Like it would either be like turn up something loud on her phone, slam something on the table, just basically, again, letting me know that you can hear me moving type of thing, like monitoring type of thing again. And so I'm just like, what is this weird thing that keeps happening all of a sudden? It felt spiritual. I'm like, all of a sudden, this weird thing where in these Airbnbs out of nowhere, 3 unrelated incidents, especially this one, this Airbnb did not even belong to the prior host, where it's like I'm being monitored and it's always these like innocent situations that creates this major thing, so I didn't understand that. So I remember just getting annoyed at this time and being like, this is the 3rd time this is happening. I'm going to do it back. And so I remembered making the noises back whenever I would hear her. And so it really just kind of turned into this petty little stupid thing where we're both making noises when we hear each other. It was so dumb. And it kept getting worse and worse, but not like super severe. But it did get bad enough where because I'm an awkward person and I don't like drama, I do remember at a certain point, I even stopped going out into the kitchen. It's to the point where I didn't want to go into the fridge. I used to go over there and go in the fridge, basically, like I said, for wraps and for my drinks and stuff. And I started actually drinking room temperature drinks. Like I had a case of water, and because I had AC in the room, I felt like that would be good enough. So I was drinking room temperature water. The food that I would eat, I started to make sure that it was foods that I could microwave or foods that didn't need to be refrigerated. And we're still having this little petty war where it's like I'm making noises when I hear her, and she's making noises when she hears me. So I remember now, like, this went on for about a month or so. And I remember, like, one day it just sounded, like, extremely crazy. It just sounded like she had friends over or something, because the noise campaigns, it sounded amplified. It was almost like I could tell that multiple people were doing it. So I was like, whoa, she must have some friends over today is what I thought. And I just thought it was funny. But not knowing that it would actually like really turn into something really crazy for me. So it turns out the two people I was hearing helping her were two guys that had moved in from different cities that I didn't know about, that basically got to know her because they're in the main Airbnb with her. And I didn't know, so they got to know her basically. And so I guess she told them whatever she told them, and all three of them were doing the noise campaigns against me. So basically, because I'm telling too much details here and I'm trying to make this story condensed. Let me see where I'm at, what time. Okay, wow. Let me try to hurry up. So basically that situation just got so bad for me that it turned into a situation where I was living in my vehicle because I was so comfortable. So I'd literally just go to the private after a while just to bathe, change clothes, and then I started staying in my vehicle. That's how bad it was. And I remembered even after a while telling the person in my close circle about it, but feeling hesitant about telling her because I do remember before when I had told other people, in my close circle about it, they made it as a joke. But at this point, I'm just like, now it's in this Airbnb, a totally unrelated Airbnb, and this is happening again. I'm not really sure how they're going to take it. And I'm feeling like it's something spiritual going on. And so they did actually kind of take it bad, not in a bad way, like treating me bad or anything, but more so like they're thinking it's something mental going on. Where to me, it was more so feeling spiritual. It wasn't something mental going on. It was something spiritual going on. I knew that because since my early 20s, I had been dealing with weird, anomalous situations. So anyways, so basically just fast forward, eventually graduated, it was very close to graduation anyways. And I knew that I wanted to teach, because I had been substitute teaching, like I told you, as well as working at the post office. I knew the post office would not be a long-term career for me. I just could not handle that. Not for me. And obviously I was in school because I wanted to become, either a teacher or go to law school. I had even started looking at the law school that was across the street, on the other street from my school, St. Thomas University. I was looking at that program, but I decided to just go with the teaching. I was enjoying doing the substitute teaching. So I remembered at two different high schools I subbed at, I really liked them. And even at one of the high schools, I remembered one of the ladies basically telling me about vacancies that they had. But I ended up getting an interview at a different high school that I had subbed at. And I remember my mom was up, and I can mention family at this time because this is nothing bad that I'm saying, or mention relationships, whoever I'm talking about at this time, this is nothing bad that I'm saying. But I remember that my mom had came up basically around the time when I graduated, and I didn't get to walk until 2022, by the way. So I graduated in 2020 at age 28, but I didn't get to walk until 2022, literally age 30 was when I walked because of COVID. But anyways, and all then too, I was a target at that time when I walked, by the way. But anyways, so focus. So my mom had came up around that time, this was when I graduated, didn't get to walk, but still graduated. And it was just like the end of the year, my mom back and forth between the island and Florida because a lot of us, her kids lived in Florida. So she came up there at this time. And this was, around the time, like I said, I graduated and I had gotten this interview with this high school. And so I remember they called me because this was around COVID time, so interviews were via phone call. And I remember they liked me. I talked to the lady. It was a really nice lady, she was basically just asking me my teaching style, asking me why I wanted to become a teacher, different things like that. And so I just started telling her a little bit about my background. I told her about, growing up in a household with a mom that was a teacher. I told her basically about having an IEP, having ADD and knowing what it feels like to struggle in school. And I think the realness is what actually made her hire me right away, because I was literally just telling her that my struggle with school is why I also too wanted to be a teacher, because I wanted to make sure that I could be the kind of teacher I needed. And I was telling her like I wanted to be a teacher that changed up their teaching style, because I knew that there were different learners, like auditory learners, kinesthetic learners, visual learners, et cetera, et cetera. I was just selling myself. And also too, back in the day, I used to really be able to, and the reason I say back in the day, like it was years ago, not years ago, like before my targeting, like 2020 and beyond, not beyond and before, I used to be able to sell myself in interviews. I mean, now what's happening, I think I'd probably be a basket case in an interview. I probably could still try to pull it together, but it probably wouldn't be like what I used to be. But I was able to sell myself to this lady. And so basically an hour later, I remember I was in Burger Fry with my mom. She called me basically and offered me the job. And she didn't even know that I didn't have my teaching certificate yet. But because she liked me so much, she just kind of offered me the job haphazardly. I mean, not in a bad way either. This was a good thing, this was a blessing. But then I remember her having to call me a few days later when I emailed her and told her I didn't have my teaching certificate. And then her trying to figure out a way where I could start teaching without the certificate. because it's different to the island I'm on. On the island I'm on, they have this really nice program where people that just graduated that want to start teaching can start teaching, and what they'll do is give you a provisional certificate. And I don't know why the states doesn't do this, and I'm not saying that in an insulting way. I'm just not sure why they don't have that program. But basically, what it is on the island I'm from, you can start teaching, and what they'll do is give you a provisional certificate and give you 5 years to take the courses to make it a real certificate. Up there, they didn't have that program. So basically what she was doing was trying to find a loophole to let me start teaching without my certificate. And so what she was telling me was I could become an interim sub. And basically with that, an interim sub is a little bit higher end than a regular sub, because you can literally like take the place of a teacher long term. So like if someone leaves on maternity leave or they have a grievance or something like that, you can replace a teacher for a year or more, basically, and create lesson plans and things of that nature. And so that's what she was trying to do. She was trying to make me an interim sub and then put me in the position of English teacher and then let me work on getting my certificate. But I decided to just come home. And home, again, remember, is the Virgin Islands. And that was because of what was happening with the Airbnb situation. I was just like, let me just come home. I just think it would be better to be home. I didn't think I would be dealing with the weird monitoring spirit thing that had started happening in Florida out of nowhere. I didn't know what was going on. So I'm just like, there's no way I'm going to deal with that at home. I did have this cyber stalking, cyberbullying situation. That was still kind of a thing. I couldn't even really date a guy on island because it was always like some sort of setup or honeypot situation. Because of these group chats that started going around where they basically were saying certain things about me. So I couldn't date a guy genuinely here on this island. And so all of that I took into consideration, because at that age, I was single. I had broken up with my boyfriend. Age 30, obviously I want to get married like any other regular woman and have kids and stuff. And so I was thinking about the fact that, I don't know if down here would be a good place for me because of that situation never really blowing over like I thought it would. I was just like, I probably wouldn't be able to, have the things that I wanted. I was thinking about everything, just not just where would be a good place for me to work, but where would be a good place for me to thrive. And so that's why I was kind of sketchy about coming home. But I was like, okay, I'd been gone for 2 years, whatever. Let me just try, let me just try to work out. And also too, I really felt overwhelmed with what was happening, again, in the Airbnb situation, and freaked out too, because I felt like something spiritual was going on. So I came home, stayed in the household with people in my close circle, basically got in this fight. You got to check out the full story because I'm trying to speed up now, guys, because I don't want this summary to be too long. So I'm leaving out a lot of details. You got to check out my full story for these details. But basically, I traveled down with two younger people in my close circle that I had babysat before, traveled with before, basically raised one of these younger people in my close circle. So it wasn't anything that was funny or weird or uncomfortable. Traveled down with them, no issue. Came to the household with the people in my close circle that live on this island. And I'm moving down. These two younger people in my close circle were just coming down for the summer. So I remember basically the person that owned the house that I came to in my close circle, they asked me to stay in the room with these younger people in my close circle. And I didn't mind because it was a full house. A lot of people were home for the summer, different things like that, and it's a 3-bedroom home. So basically there wasn't space for everyone. So I remember I basically got in a fight with one of the people in my close circle in the household. Stupid little petty fight over dumbstruppiness. Please watch my full story to hear the story. And after this fight, I just do remember things getting kind of awkward in the household. And then at night, I started feeling like I was hearing the same noises that I had been hearing in the Airbnbs in the hallways. It would sound like I was hearing keys jingling whenever I would wake up and turn over on my side. Remember I told you I wake up throughout the night. Excuse me, I'm sorry for the burp, guys. It's from all the talking. And shortly before making this video, I had eaten breakfast. So anyways, I remembered that, I would just keep hearing noises, and it wasn't loud, like overt noises. It wasn't anything like what was happening in that Airbnb that I had just left, but I was hearing noises. It's like I felt like whether it was spiritual or it was them, it was actually them, I don't know. I don't want to bear false witness, but I was hearing noises. So I started to hear keys jingling, or I would feel like I was hearing somebody walking by, like pitter-pattering really heavily, like they were like standing by the door listening for when I woke up. And then when I would wake up, this is how I felt. I'm just saying, I'm not bearing false witness. I'm just telling you how I felt at the time. I would start to hear the noises. And now keys is a part of my stimuli, by the way, guys, because of the text message I sent. So anyways, I kind of just felt like they were doing that to be spiteful because of the fight, or I suspected it. I didn't accuse them of that. I just suspected that might have been the case. I wasn't sure. But to me, it just felt like now they started doing what was happening to me in the Airbnbs, and I wasn't really sure. So I remember instead of confronting them about it, instead I just, because I knew how that might have turned, well, I really didn't know. I keep saying I didn't know I'm telling you, had I known, I would have never sent the text. To me, I thought it might have been even more drama, but I didn't think it would be what it turned into. Trust me, I didn't know. But I just went out there and started to stay on the couch instead of staying in the room with the younger people in my close circle. And so I do remember that, one of the people that owned the house in my close circle kept asking me why did I start leave the room with the younger people in my close circle. Just kept asking me why did I leave the room? Why don't I go back in there with them? Why didn't I go back in there with them? And so I didn't want to really say, well, I think I'm hearing people outside the room at night, like what was happening in the Airbnbs. I didn't want to say that. So I just kind of just didn't say anything, and I went back in the room and then felt like I was hearing the noises again. And so then I remember I sent this is the text that this is another one of those decisions, the main one that if I could undo it, I'm telling you, I would give a limb. If I could just, I don't know if I give a limb, but I'd probably give a toe if I could just undo that thing and just live a normal life again. Because literally just sending this text message created such a crazy weird, this is why I said this thing is witchcraft, because how could something so simple and menial create such an extreme reaction? Because I'm telling you, it was like a snowball effect. It was that situation, and then more happened and more happened, and it just kept spiraling and spiraling and spiraling, and now I'm a full-blown target at the highest level can be. Like, you don't understand how crazy this shit is. So anyways, I sent this text message basically, and I'm not saying what I said verbatim, but the gist of what I said was basically, are you guys in the hallways at night? I feel like when I wake up and I move, I'm hearing somebody jingling keys or stomping loudly. And then I said, I didn't say I didn't say you're gaslighting me. I believe I phrased that as a question. I think I said, I know you all wouldn't gaslight me, right? Something along that nature. I don't remember exactly verbatim what I said. This was a good 3 years ago now at this point when I sent the text message. And then I do remember also saying I would never hurt you or the girls. And by the girls, I'm talking about the younger people in my close circle that I was sleeping in the room with, and then also the people in the house, in my close circle. So I said I would never hurt you all or the girls. And so then I remember when I sent that text, oh my God, it was game day from there. This is what made me become a target, basically. And so eventually, they just started to heavily be in the hallways at night. It was no longer just like slight noises where I'm just like listening out, like, why, feel like you're going crazy, you're hearing something, but it's not super loud. And then I already knew what I dealt with in the Airbnbs. At this point now it was super loud, like door slamming, very loud, the key thing, but even louder, amplified, just like really noise campaigns now, like heavily. And I didn't even straight up accuse them. Again, I asked them. So it's not like bearing false witness. I could see if I said, y'all are in the hallways doing this. How could you? And then they did this to me. I asked. So I don't understand why it turned into what it turned into. But anyways, it turned into this big thing where I just basically became a target, you could say. And so, the younger people in my closer circle obviously went back home to their parents in Florida. And I stayed down here to teach. And I stayed down here for a good while, dealing with the noise campaigns. Again, just thinking that this is something that would blow over and they're just being spiteful because of the text message. Not thinking the thing would continue and continue and continue for years. I just couldn't imagine that that's what would happen. So anyways, eventually, I became an English teacher shortly after sending the text. This was summertime when I sent the text. Remember, I moved back because I graduated. Became an English teacher down here. And it was a blessing for me because this situation was brewing all then as I was becoming a teacher. So for me, COVID was a blessing. I hated it. I hated what it did to people. I hated the fact that I got sick. I got sick twice with COVID. So I know it's no joke, and I know they warped my words. So I'm trying to be very careful with what I'm saying. I hated COVID, but I enjoyed quarantine because of what was happening. I was able to teach virtually. I'm already shy and an introvert anyway. So I'm the type of teacher that would prefer, even though it's nice to have that interaction in person and you can do more classroom activities and stuff. With the type of personality I have, I'm an ideal candidate for a virtual teacher. And I was really good at doing that, especially what was happening with my situation. So anyways, this is what I was doing. I got a car, my first car. I was at a certain point because of what was happening in the household. I stopped coming home. I was living in my car. I had bought a MiFi. I was teaching online. And MiFi is a portable Wi-Fi. I had, purchased a cooler. So I was literally living out of my car. I had a portable stove. I was living efficiently out of my car. And then, of course, this is an island, so it was easy for me to find locations to take baths and things of that nature. I was sufficiently living out of my car, that first car at least. Then remember, I got in a car accident. I'm not going into the details. I'm trying to speed through, guys, because this is a summary. But basically, I got in a car accident. I got in 3 accidents. Now that I heard noise campaign, that makes me want to explain, because I explained very clearly in my summary, not my summary, my full story, how the accidents happened. And again, this is where I say spiritual, because this is another sign of witchcraft, by the way, back-to-back accidents. Let me just quickly tell y'all about the 3 accidents I got in. It was with 2 cars. One car I got in an accident twice with. The first car I got in an accident once with. So basically with the first car, I'm going to speed through. I was basically, like I said, teaching virtually, but still sometimes we would have to go to the school to sign like, payroll or something like that, or pick up documents, things of that nature. And so remember I told y'all that down here, they have a program where you can teach and they give you a provisional certification. So I remember for months I had been trying to get my certification, and the lady that had it was finally at the school with the certification. And so I did not want to miss her. And so I remember speeding, and this first car was a turbo engine. It was an Acura RDX. So if you're familiar with that car is whoa. And I'm a really good driver. Actually, my parents have always told me out of all 5 of my siblings, I'm the best driver. And that's still the case. Despite my 3 accidents, I'm a really good driver. But I made some reckless decisions back then. And it was a lot going on too, With this first accident, I wasn't being stalked on the road yet. But I was driving up and down, I wasn't staying in a home. I was staying in my vehicle. So that does kind of play a part in things, but it's more so just recklessness, this first accident, but also to me thinking something spiritual is going on. Because I'm telling you, I've sped throughout the years and never gotten in an accident. That's how good of a driver I am. But all of a sudden, as I became targeted, these 3 back-to-back accidents. So let me explain. So I'm speeding, trying to get this certificate. And I remembered skipping like 2 or 3 cars. And the third car I wasn't planning to skip anymore. I was like home stretch. I was like right near to the school, like 5 miles away. And then just then I lose control of the car. Basically start to fishtail, end up in the gas station, bam, into the back of an old car I hit. The old car was perfectly fine, no dents. My car got totaled. Nobody hurt. Real blessing, but still first accident, off of an innocent situation, but reckless driving on my part. That's the first accident. Second accident happens now. At this point, I had a second car, and also at this point, I had gotten an apartment. When I got the apartment, this was when I discovered that the text message situation that derived from my household, rather than blowing over, blew up, and it actually extended outside of the household, which I did not expect. You can imagine how embarrassing it was when I realized the whole island was involved and I'm a big teacher, but this is what happened. So basically, I guess the people in my household sent out the text or whatever happened. I don't know. I really wasn't inside of the private group chat when this thing happened. But basically, it blew up. And when I'm in my apartment, I'm just realizing that I'm being watched on camera. This is when I discovered that cameras were involved. I still didn't know I was a target yet, but I did realize that I was being watched on camera. Also did not know about the mosquito drones or anything of that nature. I just knew that somehow they were watching me on camera. And anytime I would get up in my apartment to bathe, get food, whatever, someone upstairs stomping heavily, or somebody speeding by Ref Campaign. At the time I didn't know what Ref Campaign was. I was just learning about these different things that they do in this program. I didn't know the terminology yet. I actually didn't learn I was a target until last year, the end of last year. So back then I didn't know. I definitely didn't know. I just knew something weird was going on and I was being stalked and watched on camera. I even remember purchasing camera finders and not being able to find the cameras. And now that I know better, I know it's because mosquito drones were the cameras. So I could never catch the camera. Of course, it was flying around and I had no idea. This is also why I'm so adamant about sharing information about the mosquito drones, so newer targets or even older targets can know what the hell is going on, because it can be very confusing when you're being watched on camera. You can't figure out where the cameras are, how they're doing this. So anyways, this was around that time. I had an apartment, discovered that the thing had spread, Ref Campaign happening, noise campaign, that when I'm going to shower, them seeing me butt naked, I'm just feeling like completely like betrayed and like why the hell did this thing go so far? I could not understand it. Baffled. So anyways, this was what happened with the second car. So I'm in the second car now, and I'm driving basically up and down, because eventually I moved out of the apartment. I was so uncomfortable with what was happening there that to me, I didn't even want to be there anymore. It was almost to the point where I wanted to live in my car again. And so to myself, I'm like, well, why am I paying rent if I'm going to not be staying in this apartment? So I remember moving out of the apartment. I had only stayed there for like 6 months, if that. I moved out, went back home into the home with the people in my close circle. And I started paying, a little money there, but at least it wasn't a big full rent, like what I was paying at the apartment, and then also dealing with what I was dealing with. So then again, started living in my car again, you could basically say, barely coming home. But in this second car, cameras were now involved. After my apartment was when I discovered the cameras. And so I think, I assume as things spread, I became a target or whatever it is, got put into the program and didn't realize it. And basically they started using mosquito drones on me. And so this is why I think in my car, my second car, I started being followed up and down island, like a convict when I didn't do anything. Basically because the mosquito drones were in my car. And so, the mosquito drones can be tracked. So at this time, this is what started happening. At this time too, I was working security at night and teaching during the daytime. And I remember driving up and down on island and just feeling like a zombie is how I would describe it, because I wasn't sleeping well. I was teaching during the daytime, teaching at night, driving up and down on the road like a zombie because people were like literally stalking me on the road. And then I also had started drinking again because of what was happening, which is why I said I promote also heavily in my videos. No matter what's happening to you in this program, the worst thing you can do is drink, smoke, do drugs, because not only are you not cognizant of what's happening around you, but then this program is a program that villainizes you. So this is going to be used to villainize you even further. So for me, this was the stupidest decision I could make. I had been sober all throughout school. Like I said, did well, graduated magna cum laude, all these different things. And here I am drinking again. I started drinking bad too, almost as bad as the years 2014 to 2016, but not blacking out. But I was drinking, drinking heavily because of what was happening. So they're following me up and down on the road, stalking me up and down. I'm teaching during the daytime, doing security at night. Body just exhausted, totally exhausted. And I even had started to gain weight, like because of everything that was going on. I was eating a bunch of junk, just really in a bad state at this time. And so I remember just the second accident, I had parked up. There was this nice little quaint town that my family used to drive to. We used to do this thing called drive night on Fridays when we were younger. And we used to drive to this neighborhood on the island. And basically, I remember someone in my family telling me that her half sister had family that owned a part of the land in there. And so I just thought it was pretty. It was like this little quaint area. And so I had found like this little park that I could park up next to. Not really a park, it was more so like a field where they used to do like archery and stuff. And I really liked it underneath this big tree. And so I used to park up there whenever I was feeling too exhausted to drive. And so I was parked there, and I remember it was late. It was getting late, and I needed to get back to the house. And this is, remember, again, in a neighborhood. So I'm leaving that little spot where I usually park at. It was late, too, like 9 or 10 at night, something like that. It was nighttime. And as I'm driving on the road, I got a call from someone in my close circle. And so I answered, and again, I'm still in the neighborhood. I haven't gotten to the main road yet. And I'm driving slow, wasn't speeding this time. So I went to answer the phone as the person's calling me. And as I said hello, bam! I felt this hard hit on the front side of my car. And so the car kind of just swerved in. And I realized what happened is the front right tire of my car hit the back right tire of this lady's car. So she was driving through the neighborhood pretty fast, but she was still in her lane. And so it seems like when I went to answer the phone, my right tire went over the line a little bit. And so when that happened, because she was driving kind of fast, she didn't see me and rammed into the front of my tire, basically. So I remember when I got in the accident, I actually thought she was at fault. And then the cops measured the lines or whatever, and it turns out I was the one that was at fault for that accident. But again, another random thing where it's just like, how am I getting these back to back? How is my luck so bad all of a sudden? I'm at a Target and stuff. Like, it's just it feels like somebody put something on me. I'm telling you, it feels like a hoax. Not a hoax, that's the wrong word. A hex. A hex is what I meant to say. It feels like a hoax too. It feels like a big joke too. But it's just crazy. Let me look at the time. Oh my God, 2 hours. I was trying to make the summary short. I really was. So let me try to hurry up, speed through. So that's the second accident. And this was with another new car. You know how many cars I've owned that have been destroyed for different reasons? There was another car that I owned that wasn't my fault. I talked about this in my full story. That was another near-death experience. I kind of started to mention it, and then I said I wouldn't talk about it. But when I was still up in college, this was around the time when all the weird stuff was happening, where basically I was in my car, and this electrical issue happened, and the car basically burst into flames because of something this mechanic did under my hood. I'm not going to go into the details of that. You have to check out my full story. But literally just all these cars I've owned that I can't keep, these weird spiritual things happening, just weird shit I can't explain. Anyways though, so that was the second accident. The third accident happens with the same car. So basically the car wasn't destroyed. It was literally just a front axle that got messed up. And so I went and I got that fixed, saved up, bought the axle, paid for it, got the front fixed. And when I got the car fixed and I got it back on the road, I remember that I had only had the car on the road for like 2 days, if that. And so I remember that I drove to this body shop, basically, not a body shop, excuse me, this junkyard, that had the rim that I needed. And so when I went there, I had discussed with the man, what the price was. I was talking to my mechanic back and forth, basically discussed the price, left, hit the highway, speeding, Not speeding like as bad as I was with the first accident where I'm skipping cars trying to catch someone, but still speeding. I was speeding. So this is my fault. This was reckless driving for real. So I was speeding, and then I remember looking down, my mechanic sent me a text, about the rim. And so I literally just went to answer him real quickly, which I've done throughout the years, and I don't promote doing that. But I'm just trying to tell you, this is something, I'm age 30 at this time when this second accident happened. This happened just last year. And had never been in any accidents in my life. And then in the course of these last 3 years where this weird targeting thing is happening, back to back accidents. And shortly before that, when the Airbnb thing was happening, the car burning on fire, just weird stuff, like some type of hex going on, weird thing. So anyways, this third accident happens now. And basically it was because I went to answer my mechanic's text, and I was driving kind of fast. And so the light turned red on the highway. And when I looked up, I rammed into the back of this girl's car, destroyed her car, destroyed my car. So my second car, this actually isn't my second car. This was my third car that got destroyed, but the second car that got destroyed by an accident. Remember, the first one was by that weird electrical fire thing. You got to check out my full story here, the details. But basically, I remember feeling really bad about it because, again, now this is someone else that's involved. Her car got destroyed, and then not only that, I think she got whiplash. I got whiplash. My knees were busted up. I remember my shins were busted up. I actually thought I broke my legs, but I didn't, miraculously. I almost broke my legs. But still survived it, and no major damage and no major damage to the girl. Really just her car was what took damage, which is horrible. So again, just thanking the Most High that even though that was terrible, it still could have been worse. But again, it just keeps feeling like these spiritual things happening and the Most High coming in and saving me. And it's just like this weird hex that seems to be on me. So I remember at this time, my targeting had gotten really bad. This is why, again, I was on the road nonstop like a damn zombie because people were literally stalking me, the Rev campaign, stalking me in cars. That was when this started on this island. I'm hearing the weird fake bird drone outside of my classroom. I'm hearing cricket drones outside of my security job. Just weird activity on island. It had spread out to the whole island basically. And now I've been in 3 accidents and it's to the point where I owe 2 people money for their car. And so at this point, I'm just like, nah, I gotta leave. I was like, I need to leave island. I need to try and find a job where I can make a lot of money quickly, pay these car accidents off, and basically start over is what I was thinking. I'm thinking to myself, I can get away from this and start over. And so at this point too, I realized I need to stop drinking because I'm like, drinking is not helping my situation. If anything, it's more so vilifying me, helping them to vilify me or villainize me. And also too, just not being cognizant of my surroundings, my health not feeling the way it should because of everything that's happening. And so I remember I sobered up and I started saving money. So I got sober for 4 months, not drinking barrel wine. This is what I was drinking around that time. I was basically, you could say, a wino, drinking wine, trying to deal with what was happening. I wasn't drinking anything for a good 4 months. I was just like, nah, I need to get sober again. Like what I did in school. This was the plan. I wasn't supposed to become a drunk again and be dealing with some weird shit. I was like, I need to get sober again and get my life together again. And so I was sober for 4 months, no wine, no beer, nothing like that. And I saved my money and I started doing research and I started looking into places that have like a low cost of living. And then also, basically I came across trucking because I was looking for a job I could do really quickly and make a lot of money. And so I said trucking. When I came across it, I was like, this is perfect. I love driving. I like traveling. You could call me like basically a nomad. I like moving from place to place. This is the kind of life I've lived anyways, you could kind of say. So I was like, this would be a nice job for me. I can see all these different places and get paid to do it. I'm a big money too, where I can pay off these accidents quickly. And so I started getting like excited. I started, like kind of like stardust in your eyes type of thing, where you start like you come across a good idea and you think it might work for you. And so I looked into states that I could go to a low cost of living, and this is how I came across Indiana. Because sometimes something that was said within my targeting was like I picked up and left and didn't plan things out. I had sat there for a good 4 months planning things out. This is why I saved up the money and I picked Indiana, because I saw out of all the states, they had one of the lowest cost of living. They had a good trucking school there. And then also too, I saw that teachers got paid well too. I was thinking in foresight, because I was thinking after doing the trucking for a while and saving up, I could go back to teaching and I could settle down in Indiana. That was the thought. That was my thought process, or around that area. So anyways, basically after the 4 months passed and I, again, stayed sober, saved up $4,000. I resigned from my teaching job, which was just last year in July. So last year, July, at the end of the school year. Basically what happened, remember I told you I was teaching virtually because of COVID. And so I said COVID was a blessing because at the time my targeting was blowing up. But after a year and a half of teaching, that last half a year, remember I taught for 2 years down here. So for the first year and a half was virtual. that last half a year was in person. And I had a terrible performance. It was to the point where I kept calling out because of what was happening on island. I don't even attribute it to the job specifically, because that's not their fault. I was just in this program, and I think they were just taking orders. But the bird drone was literally by my window. Different things were happening that happens with this program. Things on the road that was happening, the community getting involved, all of these different things. And so it's just like I was uncomfortable. I was having a horrible performance in person. And then too, just also just realizing again, like I said, that this thing had spread all over Ireland, and I'm extremely mortified, petrified, embarrassed. And just needing to leave and start over. And so I resigned from my teaching job, and in July of last year, basically decided to try and get to Indiana. So what I did was I had saved up $4,000, went to Florida, bought a Greyhound ticket. I need to speed through. This video is too long. Sorry guys, let me pause and blow my nose. I'm gonna really try to speed through this part now, guys. And I just ask that you watch the full story that I'm gonna post to get all the details, because the summary is supposed to be just that, a summary, and I'm already 2 hours in. So let me pause and blow my nose, guys, and I'm gonna really try to speed through the last part. Okay, guys, speeding through the last part. So basically went to Florida, stayed with somebody in my close circle for a couple nights, purchased a series of tickets, Greyhound tickets, because I saw the flight to Indiana was extremely expensive and I only had 4,000 to begin with, and I'm starting my whole life over. So I was trying to move as smart as possible. But this is yet again one of those situations that I wish if I had done differently, things might have been different for me. I don't think my targeting would have ever went viral the way that it did, and my targeting went viral. By the way, check out my full story to hear the deets. You're gonna hear it now, anyways. But I'm not giving as much details. But this Greyhound experience is what made my targeting go viral, and then the things that followed. So, anyways, bought a series of Greyhound tickets to get to Indiana. Went through different states, ended up meeting an acquaintance shortly before the Atlanta Greyhound station. He kept taking my Lysol basically. I had sat to the very back of the bus because I'm shy. It was post COVID. There were still COVID cases happening. So I had my mask on, I had a Lysol, and I was spraying the back seat, the very back seat that I was sitting in, and nobody sat next to me. And then shortly before we got to Atlanta, remember we're traveling up from Florida. Shortly before we got to the Atlanta Greyhound station, I do remember that this guy ended up sitting next to me because he didn't want this homeless man to sit by him, because he thought the homeless man smelled bad. And so I do remember that was horrible, and I never agreed with him, but I didn't disagree with him either because I was awkward. He just asked me, "Can I sit by you, girl?" He came back to sit by me and starts telling me basically like the guy was smelling bad. And so I'm not really answering him. I'm just like, just feeling awkward because he's like a really, flamboyant kind of character. It didn't even matter about flamboyant, but just one of those really outspoken type of people. And he was actually really cool outside of that part of him. He was actually seeming like a pretty cool person, but at the same time, it just was like, overdue with some of the things he was saying. And so I remember him kind of going on like that and like, "Girl, you right to spray these seats. I need a Lysol." That kind of when I didn't really want to disagree with him. So I didn't stop him because I'm shy. So basically I remember that being the way the conversation started, and I wasn't really answering him. When someone's saying something you don't necessarily agree with, but you're not gonna like straight up say you don't agree, you're shy or you're introverted, so you're more so like that kind of way. That's what was happening just then. So then I remembered him also talking or complaining about these two homeless people in the very back of the bus that were coughing a lot. And the reason he was complaining is because he was basically what would be considered somebody that's vulnerable. And so what I mean by vulnerable is basically, like during COVID, they said people that had like weak immune systems, like immunodeficiencies, or heart issues or things of that nature, they're considered. There was a word that we're using, not vulnerable. I think it's compromised. I can't remember. Y'all know what I'm talking about. During COVID, how some people were considered basically more vulnerable than others. I don't remember the terminology they used back then. But basically, he was one of those people. He had a big scar on his chest. He had had an open heart surgery. He had asthma, things of that nature. And so this is why I think he was scared or whatever. But the way he delivered the message is what was wrong. It wasn't necessarily his fear, because his fear was understandable. It was the way he delivered the message that was wrong. And me being a pushover and shy and not knowing this guy like that and not wanting him to snap on me, I didn't necessarily stop him either. I just kind of sat there and let him say what he said. So then I remembered those homeless people in the back of the bus started coughing really heavily. And to me, it sounded like cigarette. And I'm trying not to sound ignorant because this is also part of what made my targeting get worse. But to me, it sounded like the kind of cough that someone who smokes chronically does. It didn't sound like, and then again, how can you differentiate? Because COVID coughing kind of sounds like that too. But literally, they looked like two homeless people that might smoke cigs, like that just might have been coughing because they smoked cigs. This is what it looked like to me. But I remembered him just like flipping out about the coughing all of a sudden. He wasn't doing it before. Then all of a sudden he sits by me, he's flipping out about the coughing and just, over the top, man. And so he took my Lysol and he starts spraying at them. And so I remember like, oh my God, I'm just like, oh boy, this is what I said. And I just sat there and so after he did that craziness, he finally calmed down. And he offered that at least, because I suggested to him that we go to the gas station and get him a mask at the next stop. And so this is where he agreed. He's like, okay, girl, let's do that. All of a sudden he starts just asking me regular conversation, asking me questions about myself. Where am I from? Just different stuff like that, getting to know me on a minor scale. So at the next stop, I do remember coming out and buying him a mask and then things being normal, outside of the obnoxiously rude stuff he was doing in that moment when he first sat next to me. He seemed like a pretty cool person. The conversation was cool, he even did seem oddly enough down to earth despite that weird shit he was doing. So anyways, I do remember also thinking again when my targeting blew up for what ends up happening, what I'm about to talk about, thinking about that situation and realizing this is really something spiritual on me, because how come he didn't become a target and he overtly did that? When with my situation, it wasn't even like I sprayed at the person, I sprayed my leg, and it was because of what happened. So you're gonna hear what happened with me now. So anyways, got to Atlanta Greyhound Station. That guy sat with me, that was his stop. But I do remember him sitting with me for a couple hours and waiting because he realized that I had missed my next bus due to my first bus in Florida being late. And so basically I had to sit at the Atlanta Greyhound Station for like 4 hours. And so I remember this guy sitting there with me during the like a good half of my wait there. And then eventually he left. And so I was sitting there by myself waiting and feeling awkward. And so then I remember now leaving basically that station, getting to Tennessee. And then when I got to Tennessee is where the incident that made my targeting go viral happened. Let me try and speed through, guys. So basically at Tennessee, still not feeling like I've been followed, still not feeling like I've been watched. I do remember feeling a slight feeling in the back of me like this is too good to be true. Because at that point, my targeting had been happening for 2 years. Remember, this was just last year that all of this happened. And my targeting started in 2020. So, at this point, with how far things went on island, I did kind of feel like this was going too smooth and like it might be too good to be true. But then the other part of me still, I didn't know about the program. I didn't know what a targeted individual was. So for me, I'm still thinking, okay, well, this is still contained to the island. It's embarrassing what happened, but I'm leaving, I'm starting over. It's contained to the island. This is what I'm thinking, completely misguided and not realizing that the shit would follow me. So anyways, at Tennessee, I'm still not feeling like the thing followed me. Even purchased a burger, I ate it. That's how comfortable I was. Sat on my suitcase, tired from days and days of traveling. Took a nap. Then ended up waking up, out of this little mini nap that I took. And I remember this heavy-set Rasta in a Freemason sweater with bird chirping sounds, I guess playing off of his phone. Remember, they use drone birds, bird drones, and bird sounds on targets. At this time, I did not know, again, that I was a target. But he walked by me with the Freemason sweater on, and this is to tell you that this is really a Masonic program. And when I talked about this in my initial parts 1 and part 2 video, that was before I had even learned about the Masonry stuff about this program. I hadn't even learned that yet. And I do recall seeing that this Rasta had the Freemason symbol on the back of his sweater. But anyway, so I was sitting there and he walked by, heavyset Rasta guy, big leather sweater with the Freemason symbol on the back, and this bird chirping sound playing out of his pocket, I guess his phone. And I remember him looking at me like a predator. It wasn't like a man checking out a woman. It was more so like a lion looking at a piece of steak, that kind of way. Like a predator that's about to pounce. This is what he looked like. And so I remember just feeling chills when he looked at me and just really scared. And just feeling like, oh my God, this thing followed me. Because I knew it's not even just the way he looked at me, it was also the bird chirping sound. Remember I told y'all that they were using the bird sounds on me on island. And I had yet to learn about the bird drones. Back then, I just thought it was some sort of speaker with bird sounds that they were using to do the weird stuff that they were doing. Again, didn't even know that this was a program. So when I heard the bird sounds, it's like, and then he looked at me how he looked at me. And then to boot, I saw the weird symbol on the back of his sweater. I just automatically knew that this thing had followed me. And so I remember now this bus being the only bus of all buses, now that I realized that I'm being watched and I'm acting paranoid, this bus being the only bus I couldn't get a seat in the very back, because this happened to be a reboarding bus. So basically the bus that was picking up the people at Tennessee that were waiting with myself had already came in with some people. So those people that got off and used the bathroom and stuff got to reboard first. And so the seats in the back that I usually sit in were taken. So I had to sit in the front of the bus. And I remember going to sit next to the Spanish guy and him doing this look and then moving over in his seat before I could even, get in the seat. I had just stopped at the seat and him doing that. So at this point now, I'm already feeling like I'm being watched. I was aware of the fact that with this program in the island, that they were watching me on camera. So now I'm thinking the bug is bust. The bus, excuse me, is bugged. Again, I did not know about the mosquito drones, but I knew that with this program, they were watching me on camera. And again, I didn't even know it was a program, but I knew that whatever this weird spiritual thing was, they were watching me on camera on island. So I'm feeling like somehow there's a camera watching me in this bus, again, not knowing that it's drones. And then also to the reaction I got from this guy that I went to sit by, I'm just on 10 already. I'm feeling on edge and I'm feeling agitated. So I remember I sat next to him and I moved all the way over in my seat to the right. Like I didn't want him to be next to me. And I started acting like everyone on the bus was disgusting. You could see all the other rides that I took because they obviously have recordings of this thing. I wasn't acting like that. Yes, I was spraying the seat in the back because of COVID. And I was sitting in the very back because I'm shy. But I wasn't spraying at people. I wasn't acting scornful and acting like everyone's disgusting. But at this moment here, I'm acting like they're all disgusting. It's because I'm feeling irritated about this thing having followed me. And then the fact that the Spanish guy moved over away from me. So I'm like, I don't know what he was told or what he thinks, but screw you is how I felt, which is stupid and ignorant, but this is how I felt. And so I remember sitting by him and, moving away from him. Like moving all the way in my seat like he was disgusting and moving away from him. And then I remember in the seat across, you know how a bus is, you have the left side of seats, you have the middle aisle where people walk up and down, and you have the right side of seats. I remember to the right of me and the seats to the right, this homeless guy was basically laying with his legs sprawled out on the seat. And he kept coughing and looking at me. And that could have been a coincidence, but I felt like even that was a part of the program. Not the program. Again, I didn't realize it was a program, but a part of this thing that had followed me. And so I thought he was someone else that was privy to the situation because he kept coughing and looking at me. So I remember now I'm acting like it's disgusting. I didn't spray at him, but I remember he was sticking his leg out and eventually, his leg tickled my leg. I think it's because I kept trying to act like everyone was disgusting. And so the Spanish guy too kept opening his legs and making his legs touch me and snickering. And so I remember just getting really annoyed and taking the lights on, spraying my legs and acting, like they're disgusting. When really I'm acting like that because I'm feeling like they're all watching me, because of what I experienced with this guy with the Freemason symbol. And then when I got on the bus, the Spanish guy moving over in his seat. So I'm thinking that all this time I had been being watched. And so this is why I'm moving the way that I'm moving, which is the dumbest thing I could have done. I'm literally a cautionary tale of what not to do with this program, because literally all of the negative reactions that I had when I went stateside is what made my targeting go viral. So basically, they all started getting involved. I was right. The bus was bugged, and they all were privy to the cameras on me. So they all started acting crazy and making noises every time I moved. They're all sticking their foot out like the homeless guy, just stupid, dumb, irrelevant shit. The guy behind the homeless guy started fake snoring, just a bunch of stupid shit that they were doing. And so basically, the whole ride was extremely uncomfortable for me. Got to Indiana, I'm going to try to speed through. A bunch of gang stalking activity up there. Stalked at this point, I could tell my targeting went viral because unlike the other Greyhound stations, where I'm sure I was probably being watched and I just didn't know, it didn't seem like everyone was involved. But after this homeless situation, it seems like they let the recording go viral or something. Because when I got to Indiana, literally every person around me seemed to be involved in whatever this thing was. Apparently, the programming. I didn't know I was a target. That it was major gang stalking activity, and I hadn't learned again about the program. So just being stalked in the road. Eventually, I got a rental. Being stalked in the road by droves and droves of cars. Them setting up stuff at my inns. Making noises outside of my hotel room. I could tell that the hotel room was bugged with cameras. I could tell that the vehicle I rented was bugged with cameras. Still hadn't learned about the mosquito drones. And basically, just my targeting was crazy. In Indiana. And then the police got involved. With how the program works in my research, from what I can tell, they're always involved, but they're not always making themselves present. It depends on what level target you are. So basically, I had this incident where this cop pulled me over. And at this time, too, the people in my close circle kept calling me and warning me about Indiana being a sundown state and be careful about racism. And as they're doing that, I'm hearing Rev campaign like crazy. The more that this is happening, the more I think it's agitating the gang stalkers because they already were annoyed with me. I also even made an ignorant comment in my hotel room when I was talking to the people in my close circle, telling them kind of about the Greyhound situation, and the fact that, I feel like I pissed a lot of people off because my gang stalking had got real heavy. Although I know that this derived obviously from back home, I'm still foolishly having these conversations, and talking about the fact that I think I pissed people off on the bus. And, I don't even think they had COVID. I really think it was just smoking. I just feel like they all smoke. And so it wasn't what they thought. I wasn't spraying because I thought he had COVID. I was spraying because, of what happened, just trying to explain off the situation. And of course, my room was bugged and they're listening. And so when I made the comment that I knew that the coughing wasn't COVID and I was literally just spraying my leg on purpose, and that I thought the coughing was because everyone up here smokes, that made things worse. That made them pissed even more. Like, okay, now this bitch is ignorant. This is how they were acting, because then they're all sticking their hand out the window and doing this thing with the cigarette. That became a part of my sensitization and stimuli. It was just crazy stuff, crazy stuff. But the more the racial conversations happened with the people in my close circle in my car, like I said, the more I heard the REF campaign. And then eventually I had my first interaction with an officer where they made themselves present. And so after this interaction, the officer immediately was on 10. When he pulled me over, he's screaming at the top of his lungs, just crazy stuff. And I remember being scared and wired because at this point I had been being stalked on the road for days. And now this officer is pulling me over. And I had also been being warned by the people in my close circle about it being a sundown state. And so for me, I wasn't sure if I was being set up or what the case was. I didn't really know because all this stuff happened that I couldn't believe happened. And then all this REF campaign is happening. And the stuff that was happening was really extreme with these people, like literally so many of them chasing me on the road. I wasn't in my right state of mind. So when this officer pulled me over and he's screaming at the top of his lungs, and he's a white officer, mind you, I don't have an issue with race or anything like that. But at the time, with what was being pounded into my head and then all the REF campaign and the chasing and the stalking, I was not in my right state of mind and I was scared. I remember him screaming at me off rip made me think he was going to try to shoot me or something. So I remember being in my car and knowing my car was bugged and knowing that he had to have been privy to the bugging, because obviously all the other civilians were. Before he got involved, it was like straight up vigilante civilian harassment, because I think these people thought that I was somebody that abused homeless people, in addition to whatever craziness they were told about the text message. So I was just like scared at this point now that an officer was involved. So I remember before, when he went back to his car after screaming at me, I remember purposely having this conversation, calling the people in my close circle and talking about the fact that I was going to start recording because he's acting crazy. And so I remember when he came back to my car, his whole demeanor changed. He was being super nice. He's talking to me gentle. Get where you're going safe, okay? That type of way, like just really trying to be nice to me now. And I know it's because he heard the conversation in my car, because remember, my car was bugged and the REV campaign was privy to the conversation in my car. So obviously this officer was too. So anyways, after that, though, I remember that I was like wired and still on the phone with with the people in my close circle when I drove away from him. And I remember just like going off about, I would have recorded his ass and blah, 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 just talking like a dummy, big mouth. And so basically that's, I think, what made my targeting go even more viral. Not think, I know that made it go even more viral, because this is where I started seeing officers like crazy, started seeing EMTs, started seeing fire trucks, started seeing helicopters. This really made the thing go even more viral. It seemed like every person in Indiana was involved in my targeting, almost like what's happening here on this island that I'm on. You can imagine Indiana is a huge state. And literally this is what it was, after that moment, because eventually I left Indiana. But every state I drove through, my targeting was so heavy because I'm seeing other videos with other targets who are not as heavily targeted as me. My targeting was so bad that literally every freaking person in the vicinity of wherever I was at was privy to my targeting and was involved. That's how heavily my targeting was. And, sometimes 2-3 helicopters flying overhead. You would swear it was Ted Bundy driving through the state. I didn't understand how this shit was so viral over a text message. This is why I was sitting there certain that this was witchcraft. So anyways, I got to, I drove through all of the states, ended up basically after, a series of different things, because eventually I drove down to Louisiana and I tried to, do a truck company thing down there. That didn't work out. It was the same heavy stocking and stuff. And at this point, my $4,000 had dwindled down to basically nothing. I ended up catching a Greyhound back to Florida, where some of the people in my close circle were at, being uncomfortable with the REV campaigns and stuff. Same thing happening in Florida, and even worse, if possible. I didn't even know it could get worse. These people were literally trying to run me off the road in Florida. I remember I was staying in my car. At this point I had purchased, when I got down there, a car on Carvana. I wasn't totally in financial ruin just yet. I was on my way. I still had a good credit score. My credit score was 700 and change. So I was able to get a good deal with Carvana. Got my car, basically was staying in my car instead of with the people in my close circle, because the people in my close circle that lived there, their relatives were the basically the younger people in my close circle that I sent the text about. So, I felt awkward. This whole thing derived from that. So I didn't even feel comfortable going over there. So some days I would go over there to bathe and stuff, but I did not feel comfortable going over there. And whenever I would go over there, of course, ref campaign, I'm being stalked heavily on the road. They're trying to run me off the road. It got to the point where I was so uncomfortable around those younger people in my close circle, that literally when they walked out from the back and one of them was reaching in to grab a toy, I hid my face. I was sitting on the couch and I hid my face because I knew I was being watched on camera. And for days they had been stalking me, revving up, running me off the road, and they're even revving up outside the house. And so I remember they took this moment where I hid my eyes, and that became part of my stimuli. Used that to propel my targeting as well. And as soon as I hid my face, rev campaign, I was like, outside, crazy, weird, sick shit, right? So I remember that being a part of my stimuli. That moment went viral. That little moment there where I hid my eyes, that became a viral moment as well. So the moment with the homeless guy, that moment where I hid my eyes when it's obvious why I hid my eyes with what was happening to me. What else went viral? What else? The moment with the cop, and then the next thing that made my targeting explode even more. Basically, I was living in my car at this time, losing my mind, losing weight, not going to places to eat because of what was happening. So every now and then I would eat, but really I was doing DoorDash and just basically making just enough to pay my car note because I only had like a 100 and change amount a month that I had to pay because my credit was so good. And then also just trying to eat whenever I could. And so this is why I was doing DoorDash with my car. I was literally just making enough so that I could pay my car note, eat, and then just park up. I wasn't trying to be out there on the main road with these people, with the stuff they were doing. They were finding their way into the places where I would park, parking up next to me, driving by me, throwing rocks on the roof of my car, just crazy, weird stuff, And so eventually, I started, I didn't know that they could target you through the TV. And like I said, I'm going to upload that video where I show you how they do that. But they target you through the TV, they target you through the ads, they target you through the radio. I remember everything playing around that time was about predators, about weird, freaky, creepy shit that they turned this thing into, that was playing on my radio, on the shows, and then all of a sudden I started watching Bible videos because I thought witchcraft was on me. I still do, by the way. But I was like, how is it that every show I'm watching is pertaining to this situation? Everything that I listen to on the radio is talking about predators and sexual abuse. And I was like, oh my God. I said, what the I didn't do anything. I was like, to me, I'm thinking it's witchcraft, not knowing that these people had the technology to do this. And so not knowing that it was them doing this with their wickedness. To me, I was thinking, oh my God, they probably think I really did this because all this is happening. This is witchcraft, not knowing that it was them doing it. So I actually felt so uncomfortable and on edge, because every time these things would play, the ref campaign would be going crazy in the background. I remember that I actually turned off the radio. I didn't want the radio on anymore. And I started watching biblical videos because I felt like I needed the Most High to save me. And so I remembered as I was watching the biblical videos, almost every biblical video I put on, it was the same thing. Talking about things in the dark coming to light and angels watching. And so I remember just like, feeling on edge, breathing hard, like I'm having trouble breathing, and just this kind of way, like acting like just mortified because the people around me, all of them, it was so many of them, like legions, like demons, rapping by and acting crazy when those type of things would play. And I remember I was just like knowing that they're all watching me and just having trouble breathing and just, oh my God, I was having such a hard time in my car. My face was breaking out. I was picking my face. I was really skinny. And so I remember at a certain time, I started to lose my mind and feel like this crazy delusion that maybe the Most High picked me to share truth. And that's why I was going through this. I was some sort of martyr. And then I also too remember around this time just feeling angry and like they were hypocrites because they were throwing stones at me for something I didn't do. And then from my perception, again, I don't push my beliefs on anyone. So if you celebrate the holidays, that's perfectly fine with me. Actually, if I reactivate my Facebook right now, I'm having trouble getting in. I'm still working on getting back into my Facebook. But when I do, I can literally show you all that I actually prepared a Thanksgiving meal just year before last, in 2021, when I still had my apartment. That's to tell you that even though I don't celebrate the holidays, I will still prepare a meal and eat a meal with somebody that celebrates the holidays. I remember even right there in 2021, I had prepared a Thanksgiving meal and I said, although my caption was some cheesy, corny thing, I said, although I don't celebrate the holidays, all of these meals look so good that I wanted to make a meal myself. Something like that. I could literally reactivate my Facebook and show you. It's only because I can't get into my Facebook right now I can't show you. But that's to tell you I don't care about the pagan holidays. I don't care who celebrates it from who doesn't. I know it's a world full of people who have different belief systems. I have the right to have my belief system. And from my belief system, I don't celebrate it. And so this is how I felt, but I would never push that on anyone. Again, like I said, I don't even mind preparing a meal on one of those days and eating on one of those days. But I remember in my car just feeling like, you hypocrites, because I felt like I saw them celebrating Halloween And from my belief system, Halloween is not good, from my perception. And so I remember at the time, I'm just like, you're throwing stones at me figuratively and literally for something I didn't do, and you're celebrating Halloween as how I felt at the time. And again, not in my right state of mind. And so I remembered just at this time, just having these crazy delusions that I needed to share truth. And so I started sharing like these extremely offensive Hebrew Israelite videos about the holidays, just about a lot of controversial stuff, and even insulting people's races, because in the Hebrew Israelite understanding, there are different belief systems within that understanding. I have to specify that because in the Hebrew Israelite understanding, you have this main general belief, and that belief is that African Americans are the true Jews. But then you have different understandings within that community, just like within Christianity, how you have different denominations. And so there are many Hebrew Israelites who believe everyone has grace, everyone is going to be saved, things of that nature. But there are some Hebrew Israelites who only believe that Hebrew Israelites are going to be saved, and then some of them share the content in an extremely offensive way. And so I remember in my anger, I purposely started sharing the offensive Hebrew Israelite content. This made my targeting go more viral. And this is also what they use to turn other targets against me. So all of those things together, compiled together, basically made my targeting go viral. It's the weird kind of viral too. It's not the kind of viral where you know that it's viral. Like one of those, I hate to use this example because of what's happened to me with the race thing, but this is the best example I can think of. Like those Karen moments where they tape like what they call a Karen. And actually that's not specifically race either, because you have black Karens. I'm sure they're calling me a Karen at this point. But you have black Karens, people they call Karens. It's not really a race thing. What it got turned into was more so somebody that's difficult type of thing. That type of viral moment, like a bitch type of person. This is what they're calling a Karen. It's not really specifically a race thing at this point. But anyways, it was one of those type of viral moments, except I can't find it. It's not like where you can go on YouTube and see that moment where it went viral and everybody's going in on that person. It's like that, but worse, because it's like they have it so well, swept under the rug. It's like I can't even find it, but I can tell that the thing is super viral. It's like everyone's involved in my targeting, and it's extended beyond the island, like in all these different states. I'm sure probably everyone in the US at this point knows about my targeting. It's crazy. Anyway, so this is what happened. It went viral due to those things. Ended up coming back to the island I'm from, and this is where I'm at now. I had more issues happen and more situations arise since being here, new allegations against me, and I will be posting that video as well. I'm not going to go into it in this video because it's way too long. But that's basically the summary of how I became a targeted individual and where I'm at right now. I'm back on the island I'm from, unemployed at the moment, about to hopefully start doing security again. I'm trying, attempting to do that, looking into off-grid living, looking into shielding, looking into jamming, things of that nature. I'm just basically dealing with the after effects or the fallout of being a viral targeted individual over sending a text message. But this is really my story. And this is the summary of it. If you want to hear all the details, of the spiritual battles I've had, the details of what happened to me in the different states, then you can check out my full story, because it includes every detail, all the way back to high school, actually. I didn't have any issues in high school, but I even gave you the backdrop story in high school that led to the situation with the roommate. All of these different details is in my full story. This video right here is just a summary. And I didn't end up making it as short as my other summary, which sucks. My other summary, I successfully made an hour and a half. I'm almost certain when I turn this phone on, I'm going to see 2.5 hours. Same thing, I said almost 3 hours. This is not what I wanted. I didn't want such a long video. Ridiculous. But that's the summary, guys. So that's basically the full story without including the backdrop story or the spiritual battle that I went through in my early 20s. So thank you for tuning in. I will speak to you all in the next one. Peace out.